Oh, oi, 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 oi. I got a tuft of hair. Okay, so what am I doing? Um, it's what nearly 4 o'clock here in the afternoon, where I am in the UK. As I always do, a bit of general housekeeping. If you're a newer subscriber or viewer, uh, you've got to be subscribed for 20 minutes before you can post questions in the chat. I always do this now as it makes life a hell of a lot easier for my moderators and for myself to keep on top of the chat, and it just keeps the spammers, the trolls, and the idiots out of the chat. So there's that. We try and keep politics to a minimum, although there are some political things that are impacting sport. And that's becoming more commonplace. Obviously, here in the UK, obviously there's the independent football regulator that is actually coming through with government legislation. So unfortunately, yeah, that does a bit of an issue, but there's that. But yeah, just try and keep it clean. I've got a good set of moderators, a good crew of moderators as well, and yeah, we just do that just to help them a little bit, keep the chat clean, etc., etc. Right. Enough of that waffle done. Also, I have noticed that subscribers and viewers are basically leaving in comment sections and in the chat that they don't always get the bell notification. Please, if you can, make sure that that is turned on if you want that turned on. But that is an ongoing YouTube issue that dates back years. Every now and then, the notification bell doesn't go off for people, and they don't get that notification that the channel's going live or videos are being uploaded. So that's something that YouTube's been aware of for a long time. It doesn't seem to be as bad a problem as it used to be, but occasionally it crops up. So that's something that we've been made aware of by viewers leaving comments saying I didn't get the notification that the channel was going live. So that's something that we are keeping an eye on. As I say, if you are having issues, double check to see if you've got the bell notification on, and we can go from there. So I want to start with the Arizona Coyotes situation, and then we'll discuss a little bit about the Oakland A's. So normally I don't cover a lot of, well, I do cover North American sport, but not in the not as often as I used to. So the Arizona Coyotes arena situation has now taken a turn, a very interesting turn in the last 48 to 72 hours, last 2-3 days. So basically, what's happened is that the state of Utah has granted public funds for two new sports facilities, one for a Major League Baseball stadium, ballpark, and one for a new indoor arena that can host NBA and NHL. And Ryan Smith is part of an ownership group that wants to take the NHL to Salt Lake City in Utah. I believe he owns the Utah Jazz. And they're very, very keen to get an NHL franchise. And with what's going on with the Arizona Coyotes and their arena situation and their uncertainty off the ice, he's basically put his hand up and said, look, we're ready to go now. We can have play from next season, which is the 2024-2025 season. The NHL has come out with two separate fixture lists for next year. So they put into the computer, one where the Coyotes stay in Arizona and one where there's a team in Utah but no longer in Arizona. So it's a very, very interesting subplot. We know that there are several other cities that have put their hand up to say they are interested or potentially interested at some point in having the NHL or one of its minor league affiliates like the AHL or ECHL located in their cities. Atlanta, Houston, Kansas City, Omaha, Nebraska, for example, they've all put their hand up and said, look, we are interested. They've had discussions with the league head office. We are due to have an announcement in a week's time. Gary Bettman's due to give a press conference surrounding the situation. And it's looking more and more likely that the Coyotes are most likely going to move to Salt Lake City and share a building with the Utah Jazz as early as this coming season. The land auction, which the Coyotes want to, well, Alex Maruello, the owner, wants to buy some land, doesn't take place for another couple of months. They're very, very likely to win that land auction. They've leaked some renderings of what this entertainment district surrounding the arena is going to look like. Local politicians, including the mayor of Scottsdale, have come out against the Coyotes taking up this plot of land and using it and utilizing it. Obviously, we know about what happened with the Tempe deal and how that very quickly turned south very, very quickly. But so this is an ongoing situation, and it's become very fast moving in the last few days. It has really, since those leaked renderings, the situation has completely turned in the last week or so. from when the renderings were leaked to where we are now. A lot of discussion in North America surrounding the future of the Coyotes organization. Now, if they do move to Utah and they do move to Salt Lake City, I really think the best thing they can do is keep the Coyotes branding and the name and the logo and the team colors, because that merch sells really well. That does sell really, really well. We know Utah has a link with professional ice hockey in the past. It also hosted Salt Lake City hosted the Winter Olympics, in 2002, and obviously the ice hockey events were held in Salt Lake City in the main arena. So it's not as if locals will be alien to the concept. Salt Lake City is a fast-growing metro area. I think it's a much smaller metro area than Phoenix, but it's an untapped metro area. You've only got two major leagues that currently in North America play in Utah, and that's the NBA and the MLS. And the Utah Jazz and Real Salt Lake, they're pretty well established major league franchises now. They're well established. I think it's the United Center which they want to replace in Salt Lake City. The state legislature has basically said that if and when you want building to commence, here's $900 million each. So the city of Salt Lake City has been very, very keen and been very, very public in the last few months in saying we want Major League Baseball, we want the NHL. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this all plays out. But the wheels have started to turn very, very quickly. Alex Mariuello has brought some stability financially and off the ice to the Coyotes. However, this ongoing arena issue is basically what's come to a head. The Mullet Arena is smaller than a lot of British ice hockey arenas, ironically, or of a similar size. So it's not an NHL-sized arena for the level of the league. And I feel sorry for the players, the fans, and the day-to-day operational staff of the Coyotes who worked tirelessly since 1996 and gone to games, and those who played for the organisation, and those in the Coyotes systems. That's Tucson, for example, with the Roadrunners. There was hope when Liam Kirk got drafted that this would create a lot of more interest, and it did for the Coyotes organisation. But it's that arena issue that's been dragging on since the team was relocated originally from Winnipeg in 1996. They've had arena issues from day dot. They were in another arena where I think the Phoenix Suns play in the NBA. Didn't work. They moved to Glendale, the Gila River Arena. That really didn't work. And they had lease issues, and there's been a lack of trust between the various owners of the team over the years and the local politicians in the Phoenix metro area. The Tempe deal obviously fell apart very, very quickly. And this land auction takes place a couple of months after the league makes this announcement. So I think the Coyotes, they're going to be playing their last few games in Arizona this season. I think they're going to be in Salt Lake. Now, as I say, whether Ryan Smith and his organization has logo designs and uniform designs ready to go, because obviously we've got the changeover from Adidas to Fanatics for next season. We don't want another Winnipeg Jets, Atlanta Thrashers situation, which we had in 2011 when the team was relocated from Atlanta to Winnipeg and they didn't have a uniform, they didn't have any merchandise. And on draft day, Mark Schleifele, for example, had to wear a bland, I think it was a grey or black NHL jersey with the NHL shield on it, because they had nothing, absolutely nothing ready. So the quicker this gets resolved, I think they can start getting the merch ready, they can start doing a season ticket drive, and they can just go. Now, as I say, we do know that now the Ryan Smith ownership group have said, look, we're ready for NHL hockey now. We can have a team straight away. I think for Ryan Smith, he has to pay less money for a relocation franchise than an expansion because of how much it's going to cost. I think the other league owners would have preferred expansion over relocation, but expansion is on the horizon in the NHL. We're going to have, I think, 34 teams in the league within the next 5 years. I can see that happening. Whether Seattle and Vegas get to benefit in the way of they get the expansion fee distributed to their ownership groups, which wasn't allowed to Vegas at the Seattle expansion. They weren't allowed any expansion fees. So that's very interesting. We'll see if they change expansion rules on what players and expansion lists, because basically Seattle and Vegas got pretty good teams off the bat. So, and then we've seen a lot of criticism of the Sun Belt idea that the NHL has gone with since the early 90s, even pre-Bettman with the San Jose Sharks and expansion into California, into Arizona, into Nevada, into Florida, into Texas, into the Carolinas, with either relocation or expansion. There has been some pushback from some in the media and a lot of traditional fans. I think I don't like gatekeeper fans. I like to see, sports taken to new locations and grow and become more accessible to more people. But I do think the obsession by the NHL on the Sun Belt idea, I think, has backfired in the sense that there have been issues in Florida with attendance in recent years, although that has massively improved as the team has got better. Carolina, there was talk back in 2016, 2017 that they would relocate from Carolina. There's been talk at times with Dallas being up and down. There's been talk with Nashville at times. The team went nearly bust. So the Sun Belt success hasn't been without its wobbles and without its struggles. Obviously, the Vegas Golden Knights being missing the playoffs only once since they've been in the league, and they've got the 2 Stanley Cup finals, winning one, has been a success story and has backed up the NHL going to these Sunbelt southern US locations or southwestern or southeastern US locations. But there are fans in Canada who feel frustrated. There are fans in the more traditional areas that feel frustrated that they don't have a team, or they've had a team before. So like Hartford, Quebec, the state of Wisconsin, which is hockey mad, they do feel a bit of frustration. And it's a bit of, the NHL could have dealt with this a lot better. I mean, they owned the team for a while. They could have figured out a better arena situation a lot sooner. I think that's been an ongoing issue that could have been resolved a lot sooner. But there was talk of moving the Islanders at one point. The Islanders didn't have a permanent home for one point. They were moving out of Nassau. They went to Barclays. That was a disaster. Now they've got their new arena finally. But even the Islanders, a very successful NHL team. I mean, it's been a while since they had success. There was talk of moving the Islanders out of Long Island, and out of the New York metro area. Well, Pittsburgh is not as big as Philadelphia. It has a smaller metro area. Pittsburgh is a far smaller city than Philadelphia. It's a third of the size, if not even more. It's an interesting one that you say that they don't have an NBA team. The NBA doesn't necessarily work in every location. Not every major league works in every location, or there may not just be the corporate money. You have to understand US geography and urban areas and the demographic makeup of said urban areas to why certain locations don't have pro sports, or why they only have selective pro sports. I'm surprised Utah has a basketball team. So there you go. I'm surprised Utah does have an NBA team, but Pittsburgh doesn't. But there just isn't the ownership group there. I know the NBA are looking closely at potential expansion as well, as are Major League Baseball. They are looking at potential further expansion. No, OJ Simpson, the juice. When he got out of prison, his first day on Twitter, I do have to cringe at this. He posted a tweet going the first day out, and I responded with, I need some car advice. I want to buy a second-hand car. I hear a 1983 Ford Bronco has really good gas mileage. But my OJ Simpson, very controversial figure towards the end of his life, the last 20, 30 years of his life. But he was one of those sports stars that made a very successful transition away from sport into acting before it all fell apart in the 90s and the 2000s. But if that hadn't have fallen apart in the 90s and the 2000s, in my youth, because I remember watching that car chase through LA, I was not very well at the time, and I wasn't very well at the time, but I do remember I was a massive fan. I always have been a fan of the Naked Gun films. That with Leslie Nielsen, he's also passed away, by the way, the main character, the main actor. Massive fan of the Naked Gun films. Always found them really funny, and of course, O.J. Simpson appeared in that film series, that film franchise. I do remember because at that time in 1994, I think it was 94. I was not very well. I had I think I had whooping cough like twice. I was in and out of hospital on a lot of medication, couldn't go to school or nursery or preschool. But it was at the time that the Lillehammer Winter Olympics. So I remember the Lillehammer Winter Olympics. I remember USA 94. So there was a lot of big sporting events happening. And of course, O.J. Simpson being a former NFL player and a really famous actor. And so I sat at home because my dad obviously was still in the armed forces and my parents were technically still married at the time. They were going through their separation, but we got an armed forces discount on cable TV through TeleWest. So we had not only all the Sky channels, like Sky News and Sky Sports, we had all the international channels, so ESPN. We had Fox News in America. We had CNN. We had all these international channels as well. We got really cheap. So we had all the sports channels, US sports channels, Canadian sports channels, European sports channels, British sports channels. And because I was obviously quite ill at the time, I was spending a lot of time at home. And I wasn't very well, couldn't go very far. I was constantly I do remember being really, really ill and couldn't do much. Really not well. I did spend a lot of time basically sat in front of the TV, just being sick. But yeah, I remember that vividly. We sat and actually watched the entire car chase. I actually vividly remember with my mum and my sister, we just sat and watched the whole car chase. And because we had all the Naked Gun films, we found them really, really funny. And because O.J. Simpson was a key actor and his character was key in the Naked Gun film series, we as a family were big fans of those tongue-in-cheek kind of slapstick kind of humor, tongue-in-cheek kind of humor kind of films, like things like Monty Python as well. So we were, as a family, always a big fan of that kind of comedy. So we used to watch them a lot, and they would regularly appear on TV over Christmas and Easter and things like that. And we actually were watching one of the Naked Gun films the day of the car chase, so yeah, I remember it quite vividly. And then I remember we do remember the trial. And that's where the Kardashian family get all their wealth from, by the way. Originally, their real dad, was one of O.J. Simpson's lawyers, Mr. Kardashian. And so that's where the Kardashians get all their wealth. That's how they got rich. Their dad was one of O.J.'s defense team. Yeah, I couldn't get my favorite flavor of Monster, so I'm drinking the Mango Loco today. So Monster sponsorship, please. Make me some money. But no, I remember the trial. I remember everything. If the glove fits, I can't believe that was 30 years ago. But time flies. And that obviously created a massive sensation. Then when he did go to prison for armed robbery, it didn't get the same press coverage. It just did not get the same press coverage because he was seen as washed up and all the 90s stuff. And he went to prison. And yeah, I mean, I think there was the one thing that made me laugh about the whole thing is If I Murdered My Wife, I Would Do It This Way, the book he released. Oh, God. And there was a civil lawsuit. But this is the pitfalls of we don't fully know what happened, really, because he was found not guilty at trial of his ex-wife's murder and her friend's murder. I think, we can only speculate. We can only speculate what actually happened in the Los Angeles area at that time. But that car chase has gone down in history. It's cultural history. But there'll be those who are old enough and a lot older than us who remember watching O.J. Simpson play in the NFL. And this is the post-retirement discussion and ex-athlete welfare discussion we've had multiple times in video on the normal videos on the channel that I do that talk about player welfare and on live stream when we discuss post-playing welfare. Obviously we're now finding out more and more. It wouldn't surprise me if OJ had CTE when they do his autopsy, that they find he's got CTE or some kind of brain injury, because it was very erratic behavior. He showed during that car chase and during the trial. There's some really erratic behavior that was going on, and it would not surprise me if when they do the autopsy, they find he's got CTE. Would not surprise me at all in the slightest. But yeah, the O.J. Simpson trial, I think, was on a similar level to the Michael Jackson death and Princess Diana in a sense. But wow. Right, let's see what they're actually saying. So he's 76. O.J. Simpson. It was 1995 when his trial ended. He was sentenced to 33 years in 2008 for armed robbery. He was released in 2017. So whether he had health issues when he was released on early release, because he was meant to stay in prison for the rest of his life when he was done for armed robbery, and he got released early after a very short stint of 30. I think he got 9. He served 9 years in the end of a 33-year sentence. Wow. Wow. Sheffield United going to be starting on a points deduction. Oh, that's obviously. I remember they had a transfer embargo over late payments for transfers last season. They had a transfer embargo, but that's very surprising. So obviously, if they hadn't have got promoted, they would have had a points deduction this season. So the EFL have now waited till they got relegation. Now hit. I mean that this again more points deductions. We are seeing a lot more. Basically, this is the football authorities, so the Premier League, the Football Championship, or the Football League, the FA, saying, look, we can govern ourselves. We are cleaning house. Look, we can, dish out punishments. We will clean up football. When in reality, they're running scared and they're being reactionary because of the football regulator that's coming in. But no, the OJ Simpson, as I was saying, we can discuss the Sheffield United, starting next season with points off. I mean, I know they were late in paying transfer fees and they had a transfer embargo imposed on them. So that's really that could have a knock on impact. And we'll see. I did say when I did the Everton video, more clubs are going to be docked points for rule breaches at some point in all the leagues. And doing these football club histories and focusing on the Swiss league, I've noticed multiple clubs faced financial issues in the early 2000s at roughly the same time, about 2002 to 2005. There were a lot of clubs really financially buggered in Swiss football about 20 odd years ago. And that really struck me at like several clubs at the same time in the same league going, we're bankrupt. We've run out of money. So it seems to be quite cyclical. But Sheffield United, I don't know if they can appeal that or if they are going to appeal that. It has no impact on this season, but I think there's going to be some ramifications from that. I can't remember who they were late paying a transfer fee to. If I remember correctly, they had a transfer embargo imposed upon them last season in regards to this. I think this is an ongoing issue. And if they hadn't have been promoted, I think they would have had the full 4 points knocked off them and would have started on -4 points to start this season. We'll see what happens with Sheffield United if they decide to appeal that punishment. I can't see them staying up, but if they were to stay up, what then happens to that punishment? Because that's not a Premier League punishment, that's a Football League punishment. Yeah, that's really interesting. Really interesting that's just, they've been hit with a punishment. It does seem a little bit farcical how the punishments are all over the place and different clubs are getting different levels of points deduction and fine. I think fans are like, raising an eyebrow going, is it just cherry picking a number of points we're going to deduct and fine we're going to level against clubs? It seems very inconsistent and not a very transparent process in regards to how clubs are punished. And I find it funny they're not docked points this season for rule breaches because it's a Football League rule breach, not a Premier League rule breach. So that's an interesting one, and we'll see how that plays out. And if Sheffield United were to stay up, would they have that punishment, for next season? Likelihood is they get relegated, but you see the hypothetical. Is there any communication between the Football League and the Premier League and the FA in regards to can punishments carry over should a team stay in a league or drop down a league? It's an interesting one, but we'll have to watch this space. Same with Leicester City, because if Leicester City don't get promoted, their punishments from the Premier League or their investigations from the Premier League, will that be on hold until they do get back to the Premier League and then they're hit with a points deduction? That'd be really interesting how that one plays out. So there's a lot going on here, and I think this is more reason to have an independent regulator, a transparent, open regulatory system that's far more transparent than what we currently have, because the system we currently have doesn't work. Let's be honest. Let's not kid ourselves here. I know that the FA and the UEFA and all the various governing bodies aren't our friend, but there's been a lot of discussion basically since lockdown in 2020 first got imposed at the end of March, beginning of April, about the state of the sport. And I haven't even got onto the Major League Baseball stuff that I wanted to discuss in regards to Fanatics jerseys and the Oakland A's, but getting a bit sidetracked. Literally when I was literally just watching the news before after I did the Arizona relocation potential relocation video, and then I'll put the news on quickly. I thought, do I want to do a live stream? On holiday, I've got more time, I can engage with the viewers more. I thought, and there was nothing on the news about OJ Simpson 20 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago. So that's obviously literally just broken then. We might have to do a video on OJ Simpson and look at the controversies around the juice. But as I say, I think OJ Simpson is a cautionary tale of what can go wrong after being very successful post playing as an athlete, what then can go wrong down the track. That was I just remember that as a kid. Very vivid memory. It's a bit of cult history. It's a bit of social history. But I would not be surprised when they do the autopsy that he does have CTE. And his age, he's not that old. He's not that old. 76 is not. It's old, but he's not like in his 80s or 90s. And that is a very recurring theme and trend with ex contact sport athletes, that they tend to die younger than the average age of a population. It's very noticeable. Same in pro wrestling. You look at the average age and they're dying in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And it's the same in the NFL, rugby league, rugby union, football even, soccer to North Americans, obviously. But okay, prostate cancer, yes, he's had cancer, but it would not surprise me if he did have CTE. That's what I'm saying. When they do the autopsy, that he's had some kind of traumatic brain injury. Because what I would say is, like, yeah, when he was doing the Naked Gun films, he was quite funny. As he was always like, getting, his character was always having like, the mouse traps and getting set on fire, and he was always having the slapstick comedy end of in the background in scenes where like it was quite funny. The humor side, you have to watch the Naked Gun films to understand what I'm saying, but it's very, very similar to Bottom and that kind of humor. But no, in regards to why I'm saying that he had CTE, or it will be discovered, regardless of the fact cancer obviously got him, but in regards to his demeanor and actions in the last 30 odd years of his life, very bizarre actions, like the armed robbery thing. And also how he ended up bankrupt more than once, and there was issues where his marriage collapsed, and because he made a very successful transition from being a very successful NFL player to a very successful, highly paid actor. He wasn't just a bit part actor. He really transitioned really, really well from being an athlete to a different career and establishing himself quite strongly in the acting and entertainment industry, and then suddenly the behavioural changes. So it wouldn't surprise me if he did have CTE. We don't know that yet. We know obviously he's been, cancer's a thing, but it wouldn't surprise me if he did have CTE. The steal my stuff back with a baseball bat and shotgun with two random blokes he just paid to do it, and then get caught on CCTV without wearing balaclavas. I mean, you couldn't make that one up. The robbery wasn't planned very well or executed particularly well, but he did have obviously the Spain. Who did he play for? I've got to do some. I'm going to have to do an OJ Simpson video now because that's going to blow up, absolutely blow up. OJ Simpson. I can't remember. I generally don't remember. Was it Buffalo? Was it the Bills? Was it the Bills? Or Orenthal James Simpson? What a weird name. We just call him OJ. We just call him the Juice. He was a running back, actor, and broadcaster. He played in the NFL for 11 seasons. Buffalo. Yeah, it was Buffalo Bills. So we never won a Super Bowl. He's regarded as one of the greatest running backs of all time. Once a popular figure with the US public, Simpson's professional success was later overshadowed by his trial and controversial acquittal for the murders of his former wife, Nicole Brown, and her friend Ron Goldman in 1994. He's married twice. He was married twice. That's whack. That's whack. Didn't realize he was married twice. Buffalo Bills, San Francisco 49ers. Never played for Miami. Jared Hayne. They keep talking about Jared Hayne. Wow. So Right. So he played for the Bills, the 49ers. He didn't play for the 40. Wow, he started in 1969. And his career, he had a 10-year career in the NFL. Wow. He got 14 touchdowns, 2,142 receiving yards, 203 receptions, 61 rushing touchdowns. That's ridiculous. He rushed for 11,236 yards with an average of 4.7. And he is actually in the Hall of Fame. Wow. Okay. Acting career. Right. Let's have a look at his acting career. Wow. He was actually a professional actor before playing pro football. So actually, his acting career predates his NFL career. I didn't realize that. Wow. That's mad. Frogman, Juiced. Oh, wait. He made his own improv-based hidden camera prank TV show called Juiced. Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. He was in Ironside? No, he was in Ironside. Wow. That was before he was an NFL player. O.J. Simpson, Juice on the Loose, The Towering Inferno. Well, even when he was playing in the NFL, he was acting. So he really realised, I could do something here. First and 10. The Naked Gun from the Files of Police Squad, Detective Nordberg. The Naked Gun 2.5, The Smell of Fear, Detective Nordberg. The Naked Gun, right, the year of the trial and the murder, Naked Gun 33 1/3, The Final Insult, and then that was his last film. And he appeared in a couple, and they had he was in a film called Frogman that never got aired because of the trial and never went to air. And then he did a couple of documentaries where he was obviously himself. His endorsements. He had endorsements from Chevrolet, ABC, Hertz, Pioneer Chicken, Hunky Baked Ham. God, this Dingo Cowboy. Wow. Right, personal life. Yeah, he got married twice. Oh, in February, it was reported that he was undergoing treatment for cancer. Okay. Wow. But no, he played for Buffalo and 49ers. Yeah. The funny thing is with the NFL, it keeps all the records. Yeah, it does. There have been some very controversial NFL players, and they keep their records. In regards to what Jared Hayne, he's not the only former NRL player to end up with legal issues going to prison. I know that, but I don't know. Jared Hayne is a bit of a controversial figure in his own right. He's not on the same level as OJ, but yes, I do remember the book. If I murdered my wife, I'll do it this way. If I did it, yeah, that whoever advised him to do that, Jesus. That's what I'm thinking. CTE was or brain injuries. 10 years in the NFL back in the 60s and 70s. He's going to have had a lot of concussions that weren't reported. Controversial trial was 57% of the country at the time. Wow. Johnny Cochran. Johnny Cochran and the Kardashians' dad were his defense team, or part of the defense team. Johnny Cochran died quite some time ago. But there's client, solicitor or lawyer-client privilege, so we may never know those court documents because they'll be sealed. He was found not guilty, so those court documents are sealed, and any conversations OJ would have had with his legal team, two of those lawyers, part of that legal team, are dead, which is Kardashian and Cochran. So you can't have that kind of conversation, and I wouldn't be aware if they would have discussed anything with their families. And even if they did, what do they have to gain from it? Yeah, the US though, OJ. I mean, it's an interesting one. I think Aaron Hernandez is obviously one that does spring to mind in regards to recent NFL misdeeds. But then if something like this was to happen today with an ex-NFL player, like Gronkowski or Tom Brady doing something similar. But But yeah, stuff might come out. Birmingham City possibly getting a new stadium. They need one. St Andrews is in a terrible state of repair. They've got a lot of issues with structural problems, including asbestos. It's not great, the stadium issues, but they've had issues for a long time. A lot of clubs do. Well, hopefully they figure out a replacement for the stadium or a complete rebuild. But then they've got a ground share if they do a complete rebuild. So we'll see what Birmingham City decide to do and how they go about potentially getting a new stadium. If they do get a new stadium, they need one though. Remember when Richard and Judy interviewed? Oh God, yeah. Don't miss Richard and Judy. They were terrible. I mean, they were controversial. They're controversial in their own right, Richard and Judy. But that's another argument for the other channel. I think he was guilty of the murders, but he was found not guilty. The glove didn't fit, so you must acquit. Oh yes, if the glove fits. It's still talked about today, nearly 30 years on, the actual end of the trial, but 30 years later. I mean, if you watch Lethal Weapon 4, there's Johnny Cochran references made in the film, tongue-in-cheek, when they're having the chase through Chinatown, and they accidentally arrest the waiter, and he goes, Jimmy Cochran, he represent me. Yeah. And Chris Rock, and they take the piss out of the trial. There's constant references. There are constant references in TV series and films and music and stand-up comedy and there's and pop culture, even in like the old comic strips, the pulp comic strips, and graphic novels and adult novels and novels and document. There's constant references 3 decades on about Jimmy Cochran, OJ, the Ford Bronco. Family Guy's done it a few times. I think South Park's done it as well, where there's satirical humor about the incident. I know this is not really truly sport related, but I love this story. But no, I think stuff will come out, whether because some of his legal team 30 years ago have now since passed, Kardashian and Cochran. I think their personal notes, if their families decide to release their personal notes and stuff and their personal diaries, and whether conversations were had where he's gone, I did do it, get us off, and I'll pay you money, because he ended up being bankrupt from the trial. He never fully financially recovered from the trial. Basically, he never had any money. But things might come out. I think he did. I think there was a settlement in a civil lawsuit. Potentially, yes. I think there was, which ended up also hitting him financially, and he just couldn't get work. You notice the last Naked Gun film came out literally days before the chase. So Naked Gun 33 and a third, which came out in 1994, literally premiered in the cinema a couple of weeks before. I've got to look at this. I'm going to have to go back and look at when the chase actually happened. So bear with me a second. Bear with me. I just want to see when the third Naked Gun film came out, because they had filmed it, they had done all the bits and pieces, and it was in post production, all that stuff. Wow, I can't believe he was married twice. That's just weird. Right. Right. Let's have a look at his personal life. Right. Acquittal for murder. 12th of June 94 was when they actually died, and then the following day was the 13th of June 94 with the car chase. So keep that date, 12th of June, or we'll call it 13th was the car chase. Let's have a look at Naked Gun 33 and a third when it actually came out, because that's the last thing that was released, and the next film didn't. So Naked Gun 33 and a third, the final, 94. Yep. When did it come out? March 18th. So it was Naked Gun was released 4 months, 3 months before, and it literally just come out in the cinemas. So that's quite striking. That's very interesting that the last Naked Gun film comes out literally a couple of months before, what happened. And was in the cinema. I think it was still in the cinemas when the chase was happening, or it was about to be released onto home video. So that was still, oh, it's great. OJ's making, another great film. It was a box office success. It made him a lot of money. It was a very successful film. Only cost $30 million to make. Made 130 domestic in the US. It was a very successful film franchise that made OJ a lot of money. He made more money making the 3 Naked Gun films than he did playing NFL. So there you go. Oh, there was loads of stuff happening. There's been loads of famous cases in the 90s that happening at the time. But yeah, the thing that stands out to me is if the glove fits, and the other thing was the car chase. They're the two iconic moments of 94, 95 for me. But also at the time he's on trial and the time of the incident, the US was also, the World Cup was on. So there was already a lot of spotlight on the US hosting, the first World Cup being hosted in the US. A lot of international media already there. A lot of games being played. There was a lot of, foreigners, a lot of tourists, a lot of football fans, and so there was a lot going on in the US anyway. And they were preparing for the Atlanta Olympics. They had just had the LA riots. There was a lot going on in America socially and sporting wise in the US at the time. And of course, the US wanted to, rebuild itself after the LA riots, and California wanted to, and the police and all this. There was a lot going on. And then, OJ Simpson, black man kills his white ex-wife. We've just had racially aggravated riots. There was police brutality. And that's, I think, another thing that divided the US public opinion was, with the backdrop of what happened, the year before in Los Angeles in the early 90s. And the Rampart scandal still talked about as well. So there's I can't believe that was 30 years ago. Jesus Christ. Jesus. A lot happens, eh? What was the game they cut away to cover them? It has to be one of the it's either a Major League Baseball game or it's a World Cup game, because obviously Major League Baseball, their season was taking place at the time. So it's either a Major League Baseball game. Was it the NBA or Stanley Cup? No, it wouldn't have been the Stanley Cup, because the Stanley Cup wouldn't have been awarded in June at that point. It wouldn't have been the NBA, because that would have been done. It would either be Major League Baseball game. I think there were some Major League Baseball games taken. It was very interesting how they had to structure their pro sports. So you've got Major League Baseball, and then you've got the World Cup, and of course the TV networks, coverage and what would be coverage. I think every major sport we're going to cut away. We're going to go to this car chase. OJ Simpson. What? And then it. I'll have to do some proper research into that. But I don't know if it was actually on the US. Was it on the US feed? Was it on the US feed? I know the 89 World Series, they recorded the San Francisco earthquake during the game when they're playing. You can see the camera shake. And they were playing during the World Series in the Major League Baseball when the earthquake happened in San Francisco in 89. And they played on as the overpass collapses. But and that was in 89. But I'm trying to think. I'm honestly trying to think. I think it would have been both Major League Baseball and the FIFA World Cup at the same time. The US domestic networks would have gone, we're switching. This is happening. We're going to switch. Other than that, I can't remember. I don't know if it would have affected the international feed for, Europe and the UK and stuff, because they would have sent broadcast teams out. And Jesus, who was playing that day? I'm going to have to figure out who was playing. So it's the 13th of June, 94. Let's have a look at the FIFA World Cup, 1994. We'll have a guess. Which game it was. Right, let's have a look at. Right. Okay. Let's have a look at who was playing. So it's 13th of June we want to focus on as the card chase. Let's have a look. Results, here we go. Oh, I want to get matches. Awards, host, trophy. We want to have the 94 World Cup. We want to have the 94 World Cup. We want to have 1994. Here we go. Right, okay, let's have a look. So we want to look at the 13th, yeah? The draw, no. Summary, group stage. Here we go. Group A. So we're looking at the... No. Group A kicked off on the 18th of June, so it wasn't a World Cup game. It's not a World Cup game, which is interesting. So it would have been Major League Baseball. It would have been Major League Baseball they cut away from. Wouldn't have been a World Cup game. I just looked at the opening round, the opening match of the USA on the 18th. Although, when was the car chase? O.J. Simpson. What date was it? June 17th. No, it wasn't the World Cup. The World Cup kicked off a day later. It was a day later. So that would have been. Wow, it was the day before the World Cup. Ah, yes, it was the NBA Finals. It was the NBA. Here we go. I found it. Someone's actually researched this. It was the NBA. It was the NBA Finals between Houston Rockets and New York Knicks, Game 5, second quarter. Switched to show coverage of Simpson car chase in LA. I've just found it. So it was... okay, the NBC switched its broadcast of the Rockets-Knicks NBA Finals to show the former NFL star evading police. It was 2-2 series at the time. Game 5, 6:30. I've just found it, yeah. I knew it was... The fact the dates were so close. It was the day before the World Cup started. Wow. I bet the NBA were pissed. The NBA were probably pissed that not only have they had one of their key broadcasts switched to a car chase, but the car chase involves an NFL player. That would have pissed NBA head office right off, because that's costing them advertising revenue. That's costing them money, because at the end of each season, they divvy up the ad revenue. They work out what the ad revenue was worth, CBA negotiations, salary caps. That would have cost the NBA a lot of money, because that, oh, wow. That I knew. I thought it would be a Major League Baseball game. Honestly, I thought it would have been a Major League Baseball game, but maybe that would have been an evening start time. But that's mad. That is mad. That a live sports broadcast on NBC went, right, stop this. It's a close series. It's 2-2, best of 7, first of 4. But we're going to go and look at a freeway with a second-hand Ford Bronco with a washed-up NFL player who's a turned actor being chased by what appears to be half of the LA police department down I-5. If it bleeds, it leads. Oh, I mean, that is absolutely insane. Whoever gave that order from the NBCSN to go, we're going to cut away from this NBA game, key game, which would have gripped. That was obviously a regional broadcast, because they will have regional affiliates. That wouldn't, if that was on ESPN, that'd be a national broadcast. If that was on Fox, it might have been a national broadcast. That's on a regional NBC affiliate. Ooh. But then the whole nation switched in. Like, the whole world started watching this, because O.J. Simpson, as I say, just released his third Naked Gun film. Well-established Hollywood actor at this point, made a lot of money, very successful, obviously well-respected NFL player. The Juice. And so that would have that I swear, once a decade, we have this moment where we're going, that's shutting down everything. That's shutting down. It's like Princess Diana in the 90s as well. We had Michael Jackson's death. We had obviously the Queen passing. Just shuts down everything. Wherever you are, just shuts. Nelson Mandela giving the Webelis to Francois Pienaar. That shut down the world. I remember that. That was a year later. I don't know. I don't know if they knew inside the arena what was going on. We didn't have social media back then, and very, very few people had mobile phones. Okay, more people were getting them. A lot of people have pages. So what we see now is an everyday thing on mobile phone. Mobile phones, or cell phones as the Americans would call it, were big, bulky things. You might have the old flip phone with the aerial, which a friend of mine actually had at school. We bought a second-hand Motorola. Hello. And he was very proud of his very, very 1990s. I'm a car salesman in Miami. Mobile phone, but mobile phones were in their infancy. We had no social media, and so I think, yeah. I mean, I know I was at home ill, and so I'm basically sleeping on the sofa. So didn't have to. My mum didn't have to like, rush. My mum was sleeping downstairs because I was ill. So in case I had to go to the hospital very, very quickly, just bundle him up in the car rather than have to get downstairs and faff. Because our living room was very open plan with our dining room. It was all open plan with an archway. So this is the living room. There's an archway. There's the dining room. There's a little kitchen, garden, front door, little hallway, stairway upstairs. So I was sleeping downstairs. Basically, I had to sleep downstairs just in case we had to rush me to hospital, basically, because I had whooping cough really bad and I was really, really ill. Lots of doctor's visits, lots of medications, drips, checkups on my chest and my lungs, and all sorts. It was horrible because there was a risk I could develop pneumonia and get really, really ill. So I had to keep taking me to doctors and all that. So it was easier for me to be downstairs. So in the car, get in the car, vomit, have a bit of vomit, and cough your lungs up, chuck up some more in the car, in the hospital, covered in toddler sick. Well, I think I was about 94. I'd have just turned 4 at the time. Yeah, that would be weird. That would be really odd. I think that is a once in a generation moment. I really, really do. I mean, obviously the Princess Diana one a few years later in Paris comes out to mind. That was a bit of a car chase with the paparazzi and her, limo. But that happened very, very quickly. And news helicopters weren't following it. So this wasn't as if, I don't know. That's a really interesting one. Can you imagine a sports star having a meltdown, a pro sports star having a meltdown and leading police on a chase around where they live? I mean, that's a good question. I know this is going to start off as a sports focused stream tonight with maybe a bit of general, but it's now becoming more a bit of a general hangout. And it's only the fact is, O.J. Simpson was an athlete. Well, that's an interesting question. I never really thought of it like that. Can you imagine if it happened today? I think it's a once in a generational moment. It's a once in a generational moment of where were you when this happened. You think of it one of those days where they just remember where you were. Yeah, I was on the sofa being sick. I remember we had a Panasonic TV, which was we called it the Blob because it was this big. You had a movable speaker that used to move around, so you could put where you wanted the speaker. You could hang the speaker, look like a big ear telephone thing. I mean, it ran on a rail where you could move it around the top, around the side, so you could adjust where the speaker was, and you could adjust with the VHS. Big horrible thing. And we had this TV cabinet where one of the handles fell off one of the drawers, and the door had a special lock and a key, and then the lock broke. So it was basically this shagged TV cabinet made of wood. And we had the little coffee table, which was my coffee table in my last apartment. If you guys remember my old apartment where the laptop used to live on the coffee table, that doesn't exist anymore. My mum, we put it into storage at my mum's, and they were moving it because they were having some building work done a couple of years ago. And I said, when I moved in here later on in 2020, I said, Mum, where's my coffee table? And she was like, yeah, it's about that. It doesn't exist anymore. When you dropped it off, we went to move it and put it in the garage, and the legs fell off. Like it literally went and just splayed, and they broke it. So I was a bit upset. But imagine seeing that, a car chase today. Where that would be really interesting if that was to happen. I think it's a generational moment. I wouldn't be surprised if it happens again. on such a global scale. It would have to be like Tiger Woods. I mean, Tiger Woods had a few high-profile incidents, like he crashed his car, his ex-wife beat him with a golf club, and that was all caught on camera. That would honestly have to be like something of that kind of athlete standing that's got a global profile, like Messi or Ronaldo or Tiger Woods, someone of that global standing, like Gronkowski, something like that, doing something. Wow. Oh, imagine if it happened today. I mean, as I say, the '89 World Series. I think it was the San Francisco Giants were playing and the earthquake happens in '89, and this is when the freeway overpass collapses on the freeway below, and you can see the cameras shaking, and they go, "This is an earthquake," but we're playing on. They played on. They played on the World Series as parts of the Bay Area around San Francisco and Oakland collapsing on fire. People have died. There's an overpass highway that's collapsed on the highway below, and that happened. So, but they didn't cut away in that one. But it's happened a few times where a live sports broadcast has been interrupted, and they go, "We're going to this. We're going to this right now." But it's a very rare thing. But wow, that Super Bowl, NBA, and NHL World Series. I don't know what the MLS finals are called, but I would imagine that would just shut down everything. Because now we have the social media, now we have the access to the internet. Basically, everyone's got a mobile phone. News would spread a lot quicker about what was happening or what would be happening. Or the World Cup final, or like the NRL Grand Final, and you've got like someone going down with half a police department chasing them. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one. Like how the broadcasters would deal with it, and also with, again, as I say, social media and the internet, and everyone's got a mobile phone. I think news would them three of us. Yeah, I knew it was either Oakland. I knew it was either the Giants. I think the last time the Athletics were actually decent. But yeah, it was the World Series, and you got the two rivals in the Bay Area, and they were playing, and the earthquake happens. And it's go on YouTube. You can go on any video sharing site, and you will see. Watch Mojo will have it. Sports events that have captured, live sports broadcasts that have captured global events. You'll see the camera physically shake really violently. It was like a 6.9 or a 7.5 earthquake? It was a pretty strong earthquake. And yeah, the overpass collapses on the road below. And they didn't cut away from that. So that's an interesting one. I just imagine. I bet, look, we're talking about it now. I bet you something does actually happen now. Sod's Law states something stupid's going to happen. But that is an interesting question. What the broadcasters would do. It's a very interesting question what the broadcasters would do during a live broadcast. I haven't thought of it. It so rarely happens that something of such significance is occurring that a live broadcast that's worth a lot of money to the broadcaster, the teams involved, the advertisers would go, and we're switching. Or if an athlete was to do it today, like of an equivalent, like Vinnie Jones is obviously quite well known. He's transitioned from sport to acting. Gronkowski, Tiger Woods has had his moments as a golfer. Obviously, Ben Cousins, the AFL player, but he's not as well known outside of Australia. It would have to be a global iconic athlete like a Messi or Ronaldo. Far out. I don't know, actually. LeBron James, maybe? Michael Jordan? I don't think Michael Jordan's actually. Michael Jordan's pretty sound. Shaquille O'Neal was pretty sound as well. Honestly, I don't know. Would it have to be a current or an ex-athlete who's still very much in the public eye through either his business dealings, like being a businessman, or an actor then we would be looking at The Rock, we'd be looking at Vinnie Jones, we would be thinking of the lines of like David Beckham's obviously transitioned into like business and sports ownership, LeBron James, although he's still technically playing, but then you've got Shaquille O'Neal, Michael Jordan. Tiger Woods, I think, is the most likely because he's had a few. So no, Tiger Woods is a global brand, and his private life has been quite well documented with what's happened in recent years, and it cost him a lot of money. It cost him a lot of sponsors, and it was very, very big public news. That would only really work with certain footballers, like your Messi's, Ronaldo's, Mbappe, something like that. It wouldn't work for all the players because a lot of them, while they're big names here in Europe, they're not as well known in the US. But that's an interesting one. That really is. That is actually quite interesting. And when I'm doing, last night in the live stream we were discussing like Di Canio and Thomas Repka, and the fact that Thomas Repka's been in prison more than once for a variety of interesting offences, has Thomas Repka. But Paolo Di Canio, with his links to neo-fascists and being controversial. Yeah, Conor McGregor was close with the bus incident. I would say Conor McGregor is very likely to do something stupid because Conor McGregor. I think Conor McGregor is the one that he's getting close. I would have thought to doing something. He's already pushed it with some of his antics in recent years. It's going to be like a boxer or a UFC fighter. It's going to be a Tyson Fury or a Conor McGregor kind of character. That I think you've just basically summed up what a lot of people are thinking. Yeah, but he's already had some controversial moments, which have had police involvement. So, and they weren't on the same level of shock because he's a repeat offender when it comes to his legal issues, and he's not as in the spotlight. He's sort of like other big name athletes are now getting more and more time where they're like advertising themselves. Mike Tyson, although with this Jake Paul fight, we could see something happen with Jake Paul even. Jake and Logan Paul could do something really stupid. Obviously, we've had Chris Benoit in WWE with what happened there. So there's a couple we can think of the top of our head. Guy, actually, that guy's a little bit. He's not all upstairs. Do we though? Conor McGregor completely go off his nut and lead the police around on like an hour and a half, commute round Los Angeles or Belfast or Dublin? I mean, if that was to happen, I think would it have the same impact as OJ? Because the world's changed and the demographic of who watches certain sports has changed, and social media and the internet. I low-key want it to happen. I think the fact that Conor McGregor's had his legal issues and they've been very well publicised on more than one occasion. I think the Barclays Arena bus incident springs to mind. And a lot of Irish people don't like Conor McGregor. They really don't. They say he represents the country badly. It divides Irish opinion. And Ireland's famous for its boxers and it's MMA fighters. It's quite famous with these working class lads from really deprived neighbourhoods and humble backgrounds. Achieving great things over generations. And they don't hold him in the same regard as a Barry McGuigan, for example, and some of the other, Irish athletes from, previous generations. Because of his acting, because he was in the Naked Gun films, and because he'd actually done some acting before he was a pro player, before he was in the NFL. If you look at his bio, he actually started acting when he was in university, and he also considered becoming a police officer. So he was already a multi-talented, individual before he actually decided, okay, I'm going to do this pro athletic NFL career. And as I say, even when he was in the NFL, he was appearing in films and TV shows. So he was doing the acting whilst also still playing professional American football. And then obviously enough attention he was getting enough attention being an actor as well as an NFL player that the right agent, obviously his agent or whatever, the right deal came along. He ends up in the Naked Gun film franchise, makes a shit ton of money. Very successful film franchise for the budget and what it actually earned because it was so funny. The Naked Gun was very, very popular in the UK, in Australia, in New Zealand, in Canada. So it was popular outside the US and the English-speaking world. And a lot of the Western world really actually found the Naked Gun films quite funny. And then, of course, the third one comes out post the end of communism, and they obviously translate it. And a lot of these cultures and countries actually find slapstick comedy quite humorous. Like the Italians and the French have a very similar style of humor. And so when you're in a successful film franchise that goes global and makes a lot of money, you do become a public figure outside of your country of origin. So yes, he was big outside the US before the car chase. Yes. If you haven't watched the Naked Gun films back in the 80s and 90s, they were that kind of comedy, that kind of like action slapstick kind of comedy was really, really popular. There's a lot of films in the 80s and 90s that are very, very similar. It was a very, very popular genre. Those, I wouldn't call it, is it truly an action comedy? There's some stunts in there, and OJ does a lot of his own stunts, by the way. But that kind of genre of film in the 80s and 90s was really popular at the time. Sort of tongue-in-cheek, bit of, I won't say toilet humour, but you couldn't make those films today. Airplane, yeah, very, very. I think it was made by the same people as Airplane. It was made by the same studio, I know that. And I think there were some of the script writers and directors and producers, I think, with the same people. Yeah, he would have been getting royalties, absolutely. Anytime they're aired on TV or they do DVD releases and streaming releases, anytime they're aired or anytime any merchandise is sold, the cast, like Priscilla Presley's in it, for Christ's sake, Elvis Presley's ex-wife, they make mucho. Of course, his estate will make money off it. So Leslie Nielsen, the main guy, and he died several years ago. But his family, his estate, still make money off the royalties for 25 years after he dies. So, yes, OJ was, would have been making money off it. Absolutely. It was a perfect. Well, it's the way it all happened. If he had just gone to the police station and did it all quietly and reported, "Oh, I found my wife dead," that would be different. But because he did the car chase, it completely changed the dynamic. Because he didn't report them both as deceased, and he found them as he claimed at the time, and the way he handled it, and then he fled. That completely changed the whole dynamic, like that. The Sonic 3, that's again because there's litigation that hasn't been settled. It depends on the state as well, and it depends on the county in said state and the city jurisdiction. The US law is really weird. So here in the UK, we have three legal systems. We've got the English legal system that covers England and Wales. We have the Scottish legal system that covers Scotland, and then we have a different legal system in Northern Ireland that's sort of like a hybrid system. It's different in Northern Ireland because of political considerations, because of the Troubles. But we have three legal systems, basically. So you can be committing an offence in Scotland but not in England, basically. But you don't have each individual county having a slightly different variation and other local legislation, if that makes sense. So California will have state laws that are statewide, and then there's local counties that can impose, like, there's no drinking in this zone of the city or county, it's prohibited, but you can drink in this zone, or this county doesn't have alcohol sales unless you have a permit. So you have dry counties and wet counties, as they call them. So depending on which jurisdiction and which state or county you're in can determine which laws are being applied, like firearms to alcohol purchase, to tobacco purchase, to driving licenses, to local bylaws, to all sorts. And so if there's a civil case being filed in in court in regards to royalty payments for work done, or outstanding payments. They can, depending on, I think, depending on jurisdiction, they can go, right, the estate is not getting this because he's either had bankruptcy or the creditors have agreed a suspension of payment. A whole variety of things have to take place. It varies on state to state, county to county, and city to city. It really does. So if you're in, I think it's Alameda County is where Oakland is, or San Francisco County, the laws are different on various things. So that you might have a law that states in Oakland bars have to shut at 11 p.m, whereas in San Francisco they can take you have a 24-hour license. That kind of thing, that kind of variance where you've got county limits and different laws apply, and then you've got sheriff's office and police departments. It's all weird. But again, Sonic 3 made by Sony? I think it wasn't just because of the allegations. I think there was an issue between there were lawsuits in regards to people raising lawsuits against Sony in regards of the royalty payments from his, because you've got the music label and then you have streaming service. There's all sorts of lawsuits. Oh, the 90s. The 90s was a bit ridiculous. I remember where I was when the solar eclipse in 99 happened. And I was on holiday. I wasn't in the UK, but I remember where I was. I had just come out of a toy shop in Italy, and it was like a 75-80% coverage of the sun by the moon, whereas in Cornwall it was total eclipse. But no, the 90s was a bit of a mental decade. I went to my first football match. I went to my first rugby match. Went to my first theme park. Went overseas. Well, actually, I was born overseas in the 80s, so I can't say I went overseas for the first time. Well, that is a lie. But no, a lot didn't happen. I remember where I was when Windsor Castle burnt down, because the way the wind direction was blowing that night. I used to live not too far from Windsor Great Park and the woodland and the back roads through Ascot and into Windsor, where I used to live in a place called Bracknell, which is just down the road. And the wind direction changed, and of course Windsor Castle. If I was in winter and it was bad weather, the wind direction changed. There was a storm coming off the channel, and the wind was swirling a little bit. There's like a low pressure system, and our house wasn't actually we weren't that far from Windsor where I used to live. I'm further away now, and we had been to Windsor that day. And this is when I was still quite ill with whooping cough. I was going through there's an 18-month period where I was basically in and out of doctor's surgeries and hospitals and having drips and medications and vomit and horrible. And I remember it because we smelt something, and my mum thought, "Shit, the house is on fire," right? Or someone's burnt the toast or put something in the microwave. My mum actually thought something had caught fire in the kitchen because she could smell smoke. Bearing in mind, we're like 10, 15 miles away from the castle, but the wind had changed direction, and it was quite a strong wind, and you could smell in the air, and I'm not joking. It's really strong burning smell. And put the news on, and Windsor Castle's burnt down. We were there like 5 hours ago. What's going on here? So I remember that. Do I remember the Fat Man incident? I remember Holyfield getting his ear bitten off. Fat Man incident. What's this? Holyfield 2. I remember Fat Man incident. I'm going to have to research this because a lot of good boxing happened in the 90s, and so when you get old, I can't even spell incident at this point. Holyfield v. Bow. The Fat Man incident was this. Oh, Riddick Big Daddy. The scandalous confrontation of Riddick Big Daddy, dangerous fat guys in boxing. The parachutist who crashed into. Yeah, I remember that. I had to double check that. Talking about the OJ car chase was like 9/11 Dino scenario where you were. Yeah, we've discussed that. Where were you when this happened? I remember when Prince Philip died because I was at work, and I was working in Windsor at the time on the bins, and then obviously the funeral. We had to do everything an hour early. We had to get into work an hour earlier. We had to get all our because my my bin round on the funeral day was actually in the town centre. We started by the castle, so I had to go to work an hour earlier to get out of town an hour earlier, so that the funeral procession and of course all these American tourists. Oh my God, they're everywhere. All the well wishers and people wanting to be there as the coffin goes past could get into. They had all these barriers up. There were road closures. There was a lot of security. We got security checked emptying bins, like when we're picking up, because there's certain areas of Windsor where you don't have bins. You have bin bags, and the police every time we picked up a bag had to search the bag as we lob it in the back. So well, it's going away to out of the town to be disposed of at Maidenhead Tip. So we're taking it away. So if anything goes bang, the truck blows up and we get a day off and I get compensation. So I said, "Why are you doing that?" But we had to be in and out of the town. When the Queen died, I think I on holiday. I was in the flat. I was here, and I was either got in from work or had a day off work, and the Queen passed. I remember where I was when Grenfell Tower caught fire. I was at work, and then I came in from work, and the news was on, and got in, and I remember when Notre Dame. I think I was out of work at the time of Notre Dame, or was I visiting family when I was? I remember that. Watching that on the news, I was sat where I used to live with my grandparents. We had a little TV in the corner of the dining room. Well, the kitchen dining room, which is basically our extension. We had two dining rooms. I mean, the little TV was in the corner. The big TV was in the living room, and there were reports of smoke coming from Notre Dame. So I just put it on, and then goes up. The spire collapses, and the whole thing catches fire. And that was like, I remember when York Minster caught fire, 20 odd years ago as well. Very similar to that's a Windsor Castle moment. Windsor Castle was our, and York Minster were our moments. That was France's moment. There's some key incidents that I remember where I was. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, it's one of them. 9/11, I was at school because one of the lads at school with me, his mum was also in America. My mum was in America. His mum was in America. They were at the same work conference for different companies. It was a tech conference out in Colorado, and they were both due to be on the same flight. And so we were. I remember that vividly. I still got the newspapers somewhere in storage of where my mum was stuck out in the US. They suspended all sport for like a week, and I think there's some on the back pages. You've got all the sports news. So the NHL was in pre-season. The NFL, I think, was in its round 1 or round 2 of fixtures. The NBA was in pre-season. The MLS was near the end of its season, and Major League Baseball was about to start the World Series. So all the major leagues in the US and Canada were actually playing at the time. I think the Grey Cup was taking place in Canada at the time. So all the major leagues in North America and Canada were all actively in their seasons or about to start their seasons. And there was a big thing about all play suspended. No games are going to take place. I think they just suspended everything for a week. They shut everything down for like a week. And I remember that quite vividly. So when my mum finally got back from America, in my bedroom, I used to have a desk that was like an old school. It was homemade. It was actually made by a local carpenter, but it was like an old school style school desk where it was separate. You had a little bit for your pens, and it had like an open up lid thing. So it was on a slight slant. And I kept them all in there for many, many years. And then, obviously, because me and my sister had one each, and then they were custom made, so they were all, on a slight. Anyway, so I kept them in there for like 3-4 years, and then I went different school, and then we moved house, and I don't know what happened to the desk. I don't know if it went into storage or if we sold it, but we had this desk, and I didn't really use it much. I never really used it much. I didn't enjoy it because of the slope on it. It was not my favourite cup. I wish I still had it, actually, to be fair. But my stereo used to live on top of it. I had a Panasonic CD tape combo on top of it, but that's, again, a story for another day. I don't know what happened to that desk, actually, because, I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if we got rid of it or we sold it. I think we sold it. or it went into storage. I can't remember what happened to it. I don't know if my mum's still got the desk, I would happily take some photos and put it on Instagram or show you guys. But had this desk anyway, and opened up and you put things inside, and I just forgot about these newspapers for years. And then I've got a wooden trunk kind of box, one of those old school trunks, and I think I put them in there for a while, and then I think I put them in storage or something, or gave them back to my mum to say, look, this, you were out there at the time, you can, keep these. And it was like USA Today, New York Times, Boston Globe, all the American newspapers had. I think my mum was in Colorado Springs, and then I think she got stuck in Boston or something. Anyway, it was a pain in the ass for my mum to get home. She was like a week and a half, 2 weeks later getting home, and they had to get tickets for the flights and all that. And I had about 2 weeks, 3 weeks worth of newspapers, bad thing. And it's just weird, just going back. What are we talking about here? Nearly 23. Yeah, it's 23 years this September. 22 and a half years ago to now, it seems like yesterday that it happened. It does seem like yesterday, but when the Yanks captured Saddam Hussein, yeah, I remember that. I remember when there's lots of moments of where were you when this happened. I actually remember where I was when Germany beat Brazil 7-1. I missed the first 2 goals, caught the third goal, ran home, and then it was like 6-0. I'm like, what's going on? I was at the pub. But no, there's some of these moments, do stick in your mind. It's just interesting how we've gone off, because OJ Simpson's died, we've gone off on this tangent. I was going to discuss Major League Baseball and the Oakland A's situation and the uniform disaster with Fanatics and the concerns that I have for the NHL merchandise and jerseys from this season onwards. So they get released, I think, in August or September. They released the first Fanatics ones. We don't know exactly what they're going to look like. And we've ended up discussing moments in history in the last 30 years. Where were you when this happened? The 90s was an epic decade. It was. It rather was. I have fond memories of the 90s, but at the same time, what I know now about the family finances and how my mum was going to night school and working and raising 2 kids by herself, I didn't realise how much sacrifice and how little we actually had. I honestly didn't realise how little we actually have in comparison to others until I was a lot older. Until I was in my late teens, early 20s, then I actually realised, okay, actually, yeah, we didn't have as much as some of our friends. We didn't go on expensive holidays to places. We went on cheap holidays or family holidays to stay with relatives, so we saved money on hotel costs and stuff. We didn't have as and you realize stuff like that. So I think I'm making up for it now with some of my sports memorabilia collection. Some of the stuff that I've collected now is because I'm in more of a position. But I can't knock my childhood. It was good fun. Definitely had some fun holidays and some fun days out. But I wouldn't swap the 90s for anything, even though looking back, me and my sister both had some severe illnesses in the 90s at various points. And we didn't have as much as, let's say, some of our friends who we went to school with or grew up around. They had that a little bit more, but we didn't notice it as kids. We just didn't notice. It's only when you're a bit older that you realise a lot of sacrifices, your family makes to put food on the table and keep a roof over the head and all that. But different times. I think it was a happier time for everyone because we didn't have social media. We didn't have the internet constantly. The 24-hour news cycle was in its infancy. I think we need to wind back. I know I'm on YouTube right now, and therefore, I think the irony of what I'm saying, I think we need to wind it back a little bit in regards to how I'm spending far too much time on my phone or Instagram at the moment. My friends are going nuts with all the reels I keep sending them, but that's how these apps are designed. Social media, when it first comes along, I think there's some good to this. There's some there is some good to this. I can see the pros and some good pros here with connectivity, with catching up with friends you haven't seen for 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 15, 20 years, catching up with family, organising get-together events. Yeah, absolutely. But as time has gone on, it's become a more and more toxic beast. I think Bebo and MySpace is what Facebook should be or should have become. It hasn't. It's gone too much in a negative direction. Same with I think YouTube in regards to the social media aspect and video sharing. A lot of the mainstream corporations and media have now got into YouTube and are using it as a vehicle to access a wider audience and keep in touch with their existing audience. But some of the other social media platforms, like your Instagrams, what was Twitter, Threads, which is crap, by the way. Don't bother with Threads. It's even worse than Twitter. It is a shambles. It's a left-wing echo chamber, whereas X is a right-wing echo chamber. Let them remain as echo chambers, just with the brain dead. No, I do think we need to wind it back a little bit and put down the device. Go outside. I mean, I think I'll go down the local, one of the local nature reserves tomorrow, go for a walk, just get out of the flat. I was planning to go down the New Forest, but the weather's too changeable. I'm still not with this chesty cough. I mean, I'm back at work Monday, but I just don't want to risk going all that way, not feeling very well, bad weather. I mean, there's been flooding down the south coast anyway, so we've had some really bad weather down south. I know people say up north, the southerners are soft, but when, like, you're in a town like Littlehampton or you're on the Solent and you're told, okay, there's a bit of rain coming, got a bit of a coastal storm, but slightly high tide, you should be okay. And then you are upstairs, you might be like, just putting the washing away, then you hear your front door just crack open and then you're 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 foot of water in your house. And you're like, oh shit, that has happened. There was a YouTube channel I was watching earlier where they go to a place called Arundel. And they're in the UK for the first time. They're an American couple. They brought their son over and all that. They're visiting some extended family they haven't seen for a very, very long time. So it's their first proper trip as a young couple back to the UK. And where they are, they notice the river's quite high. And this is a bit further up from places like Littlehampton, which is flooded, right? On the south coast, which is just outside the South Downs National Park. The river's quite high. I mean, Christ, it's right up. Yeah, all that's flooded at the moment, and people have lost their homes. People have lost their possessions. People's businesses are wrecked. People have lost a lot of personal possessions, and yeah, so I do that. But no, I do think, as I say, I know the irony of me using this platform to discuss sport and stuff is not lost on me when I say I think we need to wind back, the social media stuff to a certain extent. I think YouTube as a platform is, I think, the best. I'm not trying to get brownie points with YouTube and Google and all that, but there are definite issues with it. There are a lot of criticisms I have of the platform and their monetization rules that I've been very vocal about for a very, very long time. And how they've dealt with policy changes and engaging with users and stuff. But some of the other social media platforms are shocking. And I do think we need to, as a society globally, to take that step back. We are losing a connection with I had the best toy in the world. It was called the outdoors. I only stopped playing when it got dark. And even then, we used to go on midnight walks, around the neighbourhood, which was quite fun. We used to have some fun, but England, West Germany. I mean, well, England, West Germany at Italia '90, England, Germany at Euro '96. They were iconic moments, but I was too young for England, West Germany, and Italia '90. I was only 6 months old, but I remember Euro '96 with Southgate's tears, similar to Gazza's tears, and Venables consoling him, and Gazza narrowly not being quite tall enough to stretch his leg out. If only we had Peter Crouch in '96. Angrily shakes fist at Gazza. They were fun moments as a kid watching Euro '96. Really enjoyed that tournament. It was a real positive time. But there was the Manchester bombing in '96. Literally during, I think it was the day before England-Holland, there was a bombing in Manchester. So there was a lot going on. The '90s wasn't perfect. I remember that. But the tournament went ahead. You know, and it was a great moment for the whole of the UK, because England and Scotland played in the same group. But yeah, there was that bombing in Manchester day before England Holland, if I remember correctly. I know it was a day before a game, big game, and yeah, people were killed, and there was a Manchester City Centre got a bit reshaped, and yeah, so there was that. Yeah, parts of the 2000s, and then as the 2000s go into the 2010s, I think that's the moment, is the late 2000s, early 2010s. About the time of the financial crash is when social media starts. I was at college, and a lot of my mates were talking about MySpace and Facebook and organising house parties. And I just had a crappy, what did I have? I had a Samsung slide phone. I had a Samsung. Or was it a Sony Ericsson Walkman? The iPhone had just come out, and iPhone 1, which are very valuable today, by the way. They're collector's pieces now. If you have an original iPhone, they're worth money. They don't work very well, but they're worth money. And the iPods and Apple. I don't think Apple were the first smartphone, but they were the first one that really sold to the generation where they worked with tech companies and all that. But I remember all that. They weren't even the most expensive phones on the market at the time. The most expensive phone on the market was a Nokia that had a Rolex watch in it, flip phone. That was the most expensive phone on the market at the time the iPhone comes out. Just saying. Just a thing. But I think, yeah, about 2007, 2008, Bebo, MySpace, Facebook, things are starting to change. And it was just after the financial crash, about the time of the London Olympics. You got that period between, I'm going to say 2007, 2012. That 5-year period, I think, is the turning point where we had the balance, and the balance was good, and then it's gone. And as time has gone on, we've had controversies on every major social media platform, including YouTube's had many. And that's the moment. That period is the moment. And we had a good balance at around, I'm going to say 2010, 2011. And as we get about 2012 to 2014, that's where things start going horribly wrong. Or the seeds are sown for things to happen in about 2017, 2018, Logan and Jake Paul. And things start going wrong very, very quickly in the last, I'm going to say 5-6 years. And they're already going wrong before the lockdowns and the pandemic. So there was a period where we could have got things right on all sides in regards to the balance between the social media companies being responsible and government being responsible, meeting a good, healthy medium in the middle. And we haven't. We've got it all wrong. Both sides are now being very reactionary. Social media is being very defensive. Governments around the world being very reactionary. And more apps keep coming, and it's become a bit of a mess. I do think too much tech, not enough getting out, putting down the device, turning off the laptop, the tablet, the games console, the PC, going out and about without the camera, and just enjoying the outdoors. I mean, I will go out, I will take some photos, I will do a bit of stuff, go for a walk, go for a little hike, go for a wander, enjoy the outdoors and all that. But at the same time, I think we have gone a bit too far. I got my first Facebook account in 2009, where all my friends have been using it for 2.5 years at that point. I got mine in 2009. So I was a little bit behind the curveball on that one. I didn't get my first smartphone until 2017. A full 10 years after the iPhone came out. So, yeah. But I was never really... I found it quite addictive in my late teens, early 20s, social media. I found it far more addictive. I spent more time on Facebook a decade ago than I do now. And that's just interesting how my habits have changed as I've got older. I'm ironically I'm watching less football, but more sport as a whole now than what I was, more sports content now than what I was before social media. But my lifestyle's changed. I'm an adult now. I'm not a student anymore. I'm not at school or college. I'm working full time. I live by myself. and so my circumstances have changed, and my disposable income has changed at various points. My social circle has changed. Um, you know, um, my social habits have changed. I don't go to the pub anymore. I don't miss the pub. Um, and that was even before the pandemic. I was going to the pub less, and I was enjoying it less, and you know, and because I'm not the only person whose social habits and spending habits change, regardless of how the economy is doing. Um, it does have an impact. So when we're talking about ticket prices and empty seats and TV audience and streaming and then illegally streaming, and people's spending habits have changed, and part of that is to do with this stuff, tech, and part of it is to do with the broadcasters, streaming services, the, 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 the change in the quality of picture resolution. Yeah, 4K, 8K, Ultra HD, ULED. All these. I mean, my TV is what, 9 years old. Got that in. When did I get that telly? I got that TV a decade ago. 10 years. That was state of the art 10 years ago. That is junk now, according to some. That little TV. No, that's outdated. So the technology has changed, and that's had an impact on sport. Sports science, a lot more data analytics, advanced analytics, and I think now we're also overcoaching players. Athletes are being overcoached. Yeah. I have a TV license because I do stream live TV on the laptop, so I have to, and it just keeps the bloody letters away, junk mail, and all that. Because I might plug the TV in one day. Let's say my next place, I do have a working satellite connection or TV aerial connection. That is a smart TV. Plug it in. I might want to watch something on a bigger screen than what I currently have. But I don't watch a lot of TV. The only TV I watch would be sport, really, and the occasional documentary. But I haven't watched TV properly in 4 years, something like that. Or not, like sit down properly on the TV watching a proper live television broadcast for about 4 years. I watch everything on the internet. No need. I have no need. I have my BBC iPlayer account. I've got my ITV account. I've got my Netflix. I have no need to plug that in. I don't even know why I still have it. I'm not surprised. I haven't. You plug my games console on my Xbox for 3.5 years. So, in the short time that I've been on YouTube, so literally since 2017, so the last 7 years I've been doing this? It's 7 years, I'm like, yeah, 6-7 years I've been doing this. In that time frame, my viewing habits have changed. How I spend my money's changed. My social habits have changed, and yeah, a lot's changed. And yeah, watching TV is part of that. Gaming, I don't game anymore. I haven't gamed for 3.5 years. It seems like yesterday I was playing Red Dead Redemption 2 on my Xbox. And then a week later I move in here and it's like, oh, there's no internet connection. Oh, I don't have a working aerial. Oh, that's annoying. So yeah, it's been even when I was living in the old flat, didn't watch any TV. Again, all on the I'll just break my finger, which I've already broken twice in the last 6 months. Yeah, my viewing habits have changed. Even as I was moving into the old apartment, my viewing habits changed. So that is a very noticeable theme here. Is things changed. Well, the old Nokia bricks, Mozart 40, yeah, the old polyphonic ringtones that used to go in the back of a magazine and pay like 30p or £1 for a ringtone. And you only, I do miss those days. But yeah, technology's changed. And So much has changed. I mean, it's the same with sport. I mean, we've gone on for basically nearly an hour and a half about OJ Simpson and, where were you when this happened or that happened. But in a sporting context, sports jerseys have changed. The advertising boards aren't just boards; they're 3 LED revolving. You've got the LED boards now where they can just switch the advert and the brand name. You've got more advanced stats. You've got more sports science using technology in regards to training techniques. You've got more video work done now. You've got more digital work done now, and then even with the players themselves, the kit design. Look how they've gone from the slightly loose, kits to skin tight. Get rid of collars, make them skin tight. So if you're in a contact sport, they're harder to grab. The boots designs have changed. Even though I don't particularly like all the colourful boots, I like black and white boots, and only the occasional bit of colour on boots. But everyone wants to have these flashy, and they're so light they don't offer a lot of protection. If you get your foot stamped on in any football, rugby league, whatever it is, that's a broken foot. They hurt. There's not a lot of protection in boots anymore. They're really paper thin. They weigh nothing. I can balance them on my finger. Before, you used to have to hold them. Now you can balance. Baseball and cricket equipment. The cricket bats are like really big now. Whereas when I was playing, when I was a teenager, I thought the bats were big then. They're tiny now. They're tiny then compared to now. You've got technology involved in sport with Hawkeye and with goal line tech, and they put microchips in balls to work out if it's gone over the line or gone out of play. They've really changed the dynamic, not necessarily for the better, on a viewing standpoint. So, yeah, we can hark back to the good old days, but there are positive advancements and there's negative advancements. I think, as I say, we're overcoaching athletes now. There's too much emphasis on the advanced analytics, the advanced stats, and that doesn't take into account a player's personality, their leadership skills, their spatial awareness. You're just looking at how fast they can run 100, how quickly they can get back in a defensive line, how quickly they can release the ball, rather than, well, this guy's got spatial awareness, so he's a little bit slower, but he can fill that gap. They are. This is a skill player. He may not be the quickest, but he's got very good vision. That you can't use tech to. The tech takes that away. So there's some interesting things that tech has impacted in the world of sport. If we can get back to sport, and now talking about jerseys and kits, look at what's happened in Major League Baseball with the Nike and Fanatics disaster, and how, as I mentioned before, players are kicking off about this big time. And I think we're going to have the same problem this summer with the kits at the Euros in Germany. And I think I'm very concerned as a fan of just sport and as an NHL fan, what the NHL jerseys, what quality they're going to be like when Fanatics finally releases the first batch of authentics and replicas for purchase. I'm very, very concerned what product we're going to get as consumers and as fans because of what's happened with Major League Baseball and the reaction, not only from fans, but from the actual players. The actual players are going, this stuff is not what it is advertised to be. We think this is not a good look. When you've got the players coming out going, this is shit, that tells you, as in Nike or Nike, depending on how you pronounce it, and Fanatics, they fucked up. They fouled up badly. And it's been very, very public and I think very, very damaging for both Nike and Fanatics, or Nike. I've never called it Nike. I don't know why, but Nike. It's been very, very damaging the last month or so for their brands. But Fanatics has already got a really bad rep as a company when it comes to quality control, the quality of the product, the returns policy with Fanatics. So basically, you have to pay to return your faulty item to Fanatics. You as that is a shocking returns policy. And I would think probably illegal in some countries to have a returns policy like that. You are dissatisfied. It's just weird. But no, NHL fans are already voicing concerns about what Fanatics is going to give us in August, September when preseason starts with the NHL and they get their stock in. And with what we've seen with Major League Baseball and what we're seeing with other sports where Fanatics is the manufacturer of note for stock in certain locations, because Fanatics does have a European base and they do operate in Europe and in Australasia, we're already seeing a lot of complaints about the quality of authentics and replicas that are made under license. And there is definitely a lot of frustration with the pricing we as fans are getting priced. So I was looking at the England kit. Not that I'm going to get one for this year's Euros, and what's already caused a lot of controversy. That seems to have disappeared suddenly over the last couple of days because there's no England games on. But it will rear its ugly head again. Is the price? I'm not fussed about the crappy little cross on the back. Not in the slightest. What I am looking at is the quality of the materials used and the price that they are expecting us to pay for an inferior product that we, as consumers, are getting. And this is what's been labelled at Nike Fanatics, because Nike does have an agreement with Fanatics globally for a lot of its sports merchandise. Not necessarily it's consumer merchandise, which is your general tracky bottoms, tracky top, t-shirts, things like that. But it's sports replica, like match day replica merchandise. Fanatics and Nike obviously have a commercial agreement. Nike will design them, Fanatics will manufacture them. Nike will say, here's our design, you do the manufacture process. Fanatics will go, cool, we'll do that under license as a subcontractor, and we'll stock it on our website, we'll ship it for you, blah, 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 blah. They have an ongoing, and a lot of companies do this. It's apparently going to save costs, but it doesn't actually. It actually costs you more to subcontract it out, because when you have to deal with the backlash and the negative media, it costs you money. Anyway, yeah, I mean, I look at the price of the England kit. 60 to £80 regular retail price or recommended retail price for a youth jersey. When I was a kid, we're talking 15, 20 quid. Nearly 60 to £80 recommended retail price. That's expensive. And then we're talking like 120 to 150 for an adult. Like, where can they justify that price range? Like, and it's not even an iconic design. Which country were the manufacturing? Well, I know Nike, they do have a North American manufacturing base. They do have a manufacturing base in Vietnam. Actually, hang on a second. I'm going to look at my. Here we go. I've got my latest pair of Air Maxes. It will tell me where these are made. These are made in Indonesia. Let me look at. I've got another pair of. I've got my older pair of Nikes. These are really old. Does the label? Aha. These are the ones that made in Vietnam. I knew that they had a Vietnam. I've got my bag here. I've got my notepad. I've got this. Hang on a second. No, that's made in Vietnam. That's a Vietnam one. So I think a lot of the Asia and Europe stuff is made in Indonesia and Vietnam, and I think a lot of the North American stuff would be made in North America. I do believe they've got manufacturing facilities like Mexico, the US, and Canada. So I don't know on that one, but all the Nike stuff that I have has all been purchased in the UK. So unless I go over and look at my hoodie and see where that was manufactured, I couldn't tell you. But I'm wearing Puma, I've got Adidas stuff, I've got Fila stuff, and I've got other manufactured stuff as well. So I honestly couldn't tell you, but I would assume, looking at what I've literally just picked up Indonesia and Vietnam, I think, would cover Europe, and I think North America and Central America would cover the US. Just as a guess. I know they've got a lot of manufacturing plants around the world, but I know they've got a regional head office, a regional office, and a manufacturing facility in Vietnam. You got the shipping costs. So shipping costs are quite sizable. They're not insignificant, but if you were to, for an individual item, like for an individual item, that would be quite interesting. What if you were to price an individual item, manufacture and shipping costs? Then you've got to think about salaries for the workers. And I do understand that Nike products have gone up in price for those that are directly made by Nike. So my Air Maxes and my Night Walkers, that's the other ones, the bright fluorescent ones, they're made solely by Nike or Nike. They're not made by Fanatics. They are made solely by Nike in their facilities in Southeast Asia. If I was to look at my hoodie over there, if that doesn't say Vietnam or Indonesia, I would assume if it says anything about North America, that would be a Fanatics made product. Potentially. Bear with me a second. I'll be back. Let's have a quick look, because I've been wearing Nike gear now for quite some time. Oh, made in Sri Lanka. So this one's is again made in South Asia. I'll put that in the wash later. I've been meaning to put that in the wash for like 4 days. So that one's made. My hoodie's made in Sri Lanka. One pair of trainers made in Indonesia, and one pair made in Vietnam. So Southeast Asia seems to be for the European and Asian market. So I would assume they are made directly by Nike in their facilities in Asia. In regards to who would manufacture the England kit, I think Fanatics Europe would be the manufacturer because it's a sports replica. These are casual wear, so these aren't sports kit stuff. Lonsdale made my Blackburn kit when I had my last Blackburn kit, so I would have to look at that. So I couldn't tell you whether that's made. I have got my Reebok and CCM ice hockey stuff, and I know that Reebok was made in Canada, in Quebec, and I know the CCM was made in Canada as well. I couldn't tell you, actually. I could not tell you. I think they're both made in the same battery, actually, if I'm not mistaken. Honestly, right now, off the top of my head, I don't think I could tell you, quite honestly. But I'm assuming if it was just casual wear like this, which is not classed as sports replica stuff, I would say that would be Asia. If it was the actual sports kits, I couldn't tell you. But I believe if it's Fanatics, it could be made somewhere, but I couldn't tell you. But looking at 3 separate Nike products, they're made in 3 different countries. So whatever's cost effective and makes profit for Nike, basically. But they'll be made in their own factories. So they're actual Nike or Nike. They make plants. Same with this Puma stuff. Same with Adidas stuff. They'll make it in-house. But they're just general sales. When it comes to sports kits, they make them in specialized factories. But I couldn't tell you off the top of my head unless I actually got my hands on one and had a look at it. But I know that they've already been criticised. And you look at the press release in regards to, oh, yes, we're using this material. And it was a cheeky twist. It's exactly the same as the Major League Baseball release that they did 2 months ago with a few word changes, and you remove baseball and you put football and FA rather than Major League. And you see where I'm getting at with that? So head office by Nike gone, fine. Oh, look, we've already got a template. We need to release a press release. We've got a template. We've already had this a month ago. Change a few words and a few letters and a few spellings, and out the door we go. Okay. Portsmouth get promoted this weekend from League One. Stockport and Wrexham get promoted from League Two. That is interesting. Again, as I say, that timing of the season, tail end of the season, relegations are getting confirmed, promotions are getting confirmed. So yeah, we're at that point in the season now where it's the tail end, and those clubs that have been successful go up, and those that have struggled go down. But it would be nice to see Portsmouth against Southampton in the Championship as a competitive, regular fixture again, because that would be tasty. I've missed the South Coast derby between Portsmouth and Southampton meaning something. Bournemouth and Brighton are the top dogs on the South Coast at the moment. So it would be nice to see, Southampton and Portsmouth, take that next level. So the cost side of things, I don't know how much they're going to make on profit, because I know the manufacturing and shipping costs have gone up because of inflation. So their profit margin is still big, but it's not as big as what it would have been, let's say, 2018. So I think the profit margin has closed a little bit because of the rising costs. But honestly, I couldn't tell you what the profit margin is, but they're still going to make a huge profit, yeah. Although shipping costs have gone up the last 6-7 months because of what's happening. I really need to tidy up my fucking flat. My flat is a shithole. But no, it's an interesting question you raise, because we've seen a lot of discussion around ticket prices. We've seen a lot of discussion about viewership figures on TV and online in regards to major sporting events. And one thing that I picked up with the Major League Baseball when they came to London last year, very similar to 2019, was fans leaving early and empty seats. Another thing I picked up watching the FA Cup, empty seats, or fans having issues, like major sporting events, fans having issues, fans commenting on the price of tickets. We've seen this with like the Champions League, the European finals, the Champions League and Europa League, the cost of tickets, and how doesn't matter where you're from, but what fans are being charged through legitimate resale sites, as well as literally going through the direct club allocations, of what then local hotels and B&Es will do. Like, I will jack the price up. There will come a point, fans are loyal to a fault, but there will come a point where we are going to see more protests. I know that, I think Leeds to Hampton, the price of away tickets has been criticised. I saw that. And so what we as the end consumer are paying, I mean, it is raising a lot of questions in that regard, and then rightly so. It's a discussion we are having, and it's being had quite regularly. And so, like ticket price, and then concession prices for like your food, your drink, and the quality of the food and drink you get is regularly raised. And then, I mean, I've got my old programs and stuff that I've been collecting over the last couple of years, and I'm going to look at the prices of them, because that's quite striking how much a football program used to cost on a match day, and why certain clubs have decided to get rid of their football programs or shrink the size of them. And so the old football programs used to be every game you would go in up, and a member of the fan club, supporters club, would have, there'd be several sellers, and all the club might have an employee whose job is to sell that as part of the merchandise sales. You see them less now, or the program is significantly reduced, and some clubs just cannot afford to print them and sell them because they're not making enough money, or they're making a loss on them. But they are very collectible. So I've got a collection of them, and I'm going to go through my football program collection that I have, or some of my football program collection. I haven't got all my football programs to hand here. Some are actually in storage, but I've got a fair few that I've picked up over the years as collectibles. And yeah, some clubs are like, we've had to reduce the size of the program or stop selling them every match day because we don't make enough money on them, or it's actually costing us money if we don't sell them all. So if the stadium doesn't sell out, or not enough fans want to buy the program, they don't make any money, because they've got to pay the company that prints them a fee. So they tell the company, we want this printed, this is what we want printed in this amount, or they print it themselves to try and keep it in-house, and that costs money. So they will go, here's what we want in the program for this week or this match day. And you've got to think, some clubs will have 3 games in a week, hypothetically. You might have to play on the Monday night, a midweek cup game on a Thursday, or a game on a Thursday, and then on the Sunday. You might have to have 3 games. That's 3 separate programs if you're playing all 3 games at home. If you're playing away, the other team has to print the program. But if you're playing at home, that's 3 programs in a week. That's a lot of money. So let's say you've got a League Cup tie, then an FA Cup tie, and then a league game. That's a lot of money. And if you don't sell them all, that's lost revenue. That spider is annoying the hell out of me. I've got to go through all that stuff down there. I can't be honest to go through that stuff. I've got a load of books down there in storage, and I've got to go clear all that space out and have a proper clear out. And I've been putting it off for 3.5 years. Got to get it done. So back in the program. It's just annoying me as all. But no, jokes aside, yeah, the price of football programs, which is part of the merchandise sales at a match day event or at a club, is quite interesting. Like the annual, they used to get the old club annuals that come out every year. They're selling them less. A lot of them have just gone online now, and you just download what you want. A lot of them just don't get sold anymore. The annuals. So I have a Premier League annual from the 95-96 season or the 96-97 season, where they look forward to 96-97, but they look back at 95-96 season. So it's from 1996, and yeah, it's stunning that you just don't get them anymore. They're they've just been discontinued. They just don't do them. But that was I remember getting that. So the merchandising has changed as well. We still have 442 magazine, but there's less of and Rugby World, for example, these regular, it's like Hockey News as well, obviously in Canada. But again, they're the publications in that regard are getting less. We used to have MCN Sport. We don't have that. I've got one edition over there somewhere. It's falling apart, but we used to get them on a weekly or monthly basis. Don't get them anymore. Rugby World still gets published, and Backpass, which is a magazine that I have, which is a retro mag, which looks back at football back in the day, still gets published, but gets published quarterly. And then you have 442. But there's a lot of other ones that have disappeared that used to get published on a weekly or monthly basis that don't get published anymore. And I've got some in my collection that were published in the 60s and 70s that ceased publication some time ago. I don't even know when they ceased publication. I'll have to have a look online at that. Quite annoying ear infection. So the media landscape has changed as well, and then the sponsorship landscape has changed. So I've got several decades worth. So I've got some going back to the 60s and 70s, and then some from the 80s and 90s, and then one from the 2000s. And you'll see how the sponsorship and the advertising changes as well over a 30, 35-year period, 40-year period. It's quite interesting to see that in the early days you might have, especially on the football programs, will have like the match day sponsor, and some local companies might advertise and then you have the gambling and the tobacco and the alcohol and the big multinational brands. And it's very interesting looking at the different level that the club is at. So you'll notice I've got a Preston North End Aldershot FC, not Aldershot Town. So this is pre-1992. I think it's in the last season Aldershot FC will go before they go bust. And you look at the quality compared to the Arsenal or the Chelsea program from the higher division, where they've got more money to spend, although Chelsea were basically bankrupt, but they're able to make at least more money off this in their commercial arm. And you look at the difference in quality. You look at the sponsors that are willing to, or the advertisers that are willing to go, can we buy some ad space in your program, please? So that's quite interesting to see what level you're at and the size of your team or your potential attendance can impact what companies advertise or are willing to sponsor. So the advertisers and the sponsors for that particular program or that season. Which is quite. I've got the FA Cup final program from 2002, so that'd be quite interesting to see what adverts are in there, and what sponsors are in that one as well. I'll have to dig that. I see it's over on my sofa. I'll have to dig that out, but that'd be quite interesting to look at that. So there's a lot to unpick. So yeah, there's a lot to unpick, and you can see the change in sponsorship. You can see the change in sponsorship over each decade. Going through 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s. It's quite interesting looking at that snapshot of, you just get one program from a decade and go, right, this is the 60s. These are the sponsors or advertisers that were willing to go on this weekly publication. There's one that was a weekly publication. Only cost about 25p, I think. in today's money, very cheap. It's not very thick, but you can see certain companies. It was tobacco actually, and there was I think Reliant car company, which has now gone bust, but there was a car company called Reliant that made the famous three-wheeler. They advertise as well. There's a couple of others in there, but mostly Wilkinson Sword had a lot of adverts in sport. Wilkinson Sword were very, very big, which is where you get your razor blades from, similar to Gillette. But they also used to make armor. They still make the cavalry swords for the British Army, and the officers' swords. They're made by Wilkinson Sword. Bet you didn't know that. But they did a lot of advertising for shaving products and skincare products for men. And they're quite a common one in the 60s and 70s, even till now. Wilkinson Sword, quite a well-known company. They've been advertising using sports publications for a long time. I don't know if you talk about the Sheffield United have been given. Yes, that kicks in next season should they get relegated. I would assume if they manage to stay in the Premier League that punishment gets delayed by the Football League because it's two different governing bodies. But yes, we have discussed that. It's going to be interesting to see how many more clubs get points deductions for rule breaches, because it looks like now the Football League and the Premier League are getting very reactionary because they want to be seen to be like, well, we're taking action on the rule-breaking clubs before the regulator comes in. So they're just cherry-picking the punishments at this point. The fact they got a 4-point deduction with 2 points suspended is a bit interesting, considering that these offences happened 2 seasons ago and they were given a transfer embargo at the time. So this is a secondary punishment on top of the punishment they already had. So I think they've delayed announcing it because they were a Premier League club this season. If they'd failed to get promoted, I think they would have been hit the full 4 points and they would have been punished by now. So they're clearly there's an ongoing issue there. Whether Sheffield United appeal will be interesting. But yes, we had covered it earlier on, yes. Yeah, they're considering changing the rules for next season to protect the Big Six. That's what a lot of fans say. Oh, why? Well, you change the rules next season. Oh, that's right. Man City and Chelsea are under their suspicion, and a few other clubs are that have a bit more money. But the luxury tax, Major League Baseball's had it for years. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because the big teams are still the big teams. The lesser teams can only compete for a couple of seasons before they're basically like, we can't afford this anymore. So the luxury tax system is proven not to work. Look at Major League Baseball. And to a certain extent, the NBA has a soft cap system with a slight luxury tax. Doesn't work in the NBA either. Even though they've got a bit more of a strict salary cap, spending cap policy. I'm just going to have to adjust my seating position. My back is killing me. The luxury tax system that they're proposing is similar. It's like a hybrid between the NBA and Major League Baseball, more leads towards the Major League Baseball style of luxury tax, and it doesn't work. So when we look at it, and I've done videos on Major League Baseball, considering their recent lockout and in 2020 the talks of the player strike potentially happening and the return to play talks and the whole situation surrounding the CBA. They don't have a luxury tax, and the minimum salary is still less than the NHL, even though Major League Baseball makes twice as much money in revenue. Not profit, revenue, because a lot of teams in baseball lose money. It's very interesting how you've got all these American owners and American investment in the game, in the sport, and they're considering, and some of the owners are baseball owners. Oh, who knew? Baseball team owners in Major League Baseball, and suddenly we're discussing like a luxury tax system similar to Major League Baseball that doesn't work. It does not work. And look at the Oakland A's. And I'm going to use the Oakland A's as a prime example of where it's not working and hasn't worked. The Oakland A's have not spent money because they don't make any money. And their best players get pinched by other teams. They don't spend. There's no salary caps. They don't have to meet a spending floor. They can spend pennies on a team, yet still get revenue sharing. The luxury tax doesn't work. It's a very uncompetitive league. The same teams are always making the World Series regularly. It's quite commonplace to see some teams not even make the World Series, but spend stupid money on players and be able to continue to sign big free agents because they have the financial backing, or they have the bigger fan base, or the bigger TV revenue, or corporate sponsors because of where they're based. And the smaller market teams that have less wealthy owners or lesser ability to entice that big corporate sponsor or sponsorship, or they have a smaller metro area or a smaller TV audience on the regional broadcast, they're at a disadvantage because there is no salary cap, and so therefore their budget, what they spend, they can only be competitive for like 2, 3, maybe 4 seasons, and then they have to tear it all down because their best players are offered 2, 3 times as much by the Yankees over, let's say, the Oakland A's. I'm using that as an example. So the A's can't afford it. They can't keep their best players. The Yankees come along, or the Giants, or a more financially viable team, and they go, we can offer you as a free agent this much, and the Oakland, well, we can only offer you this much. And because the team isn't winning, the players go, I would love to stay, but we're not winning. I want to win a World Series. This team's more likely to win a World Series. Thank you, but no thanks. And that's the problem with the luxury tax. It doesn't work. It still penalises the poorer teams because the rich teams go, we don't care. We'll keep spending the money. We don't care. And they're considering it, and it will just be, well, it's going to protect the Big Six. Regardless of how bad the Big Six are, financially, they can just do what they want. So it's still an unfair system. It's a flawed system. It's a broken system. It doesn't work. Whereas with a salary cap, especially a hard cap, if you are to circumvent that, then you are clearly cheating and there will be punishment. And I know in a lot of leagues, it's a very transparent system where we know how much what contracts are worth, how they're structured, and what minimums and maximums they're allowed to hit. They have to have a salary cap floor. They can't just go, we're not spending any money on salaries. They have to meet a minimum salary threshold for players, and they can't exceed a limit. And if they do, there are consequences for each cent over. We've seen in the Super League, Rugby League, that Wigan breached the salary cap, got fined. It was a minor breach. I think a couple of points taken. It was a minor breach. But then we've seen in Australia with salary cap breaches in the NRL and AFL, titles have been stripped and teams have, heavily fined and playing for no points, and they have been severely punished. So to keep the competitive balance is difficult. But we need to get the financial side of the sport better regulated and under control. There's a bloody spider down there. You can't see it, but it's there, and it's annoying the hell out of me, and I'm going to have to remove it. No, it's bugging me. But no, it jokes aside, I'm going to have to. Oh, God, this is so uncomfortable. My back is in terrible shape. I just love I love being in my mid-30s and being broken physically. Oh, shit. But now I can see the spider more. No, I think, the luxury tax while it sounds good on paper, if you really are an expert, it doesn't work. It doesn't make the league balanced and competitive. And I think the luxury tax system they're going to bring in is going to be similar to Major League Baseball, just with the fact we've got promotion relegation. So it doesn't work. And if they bring that in, how does that impact the promotion relegation aspect? And how does that impact the promoted teams? And then how does that impact, the Football League going down with their financial rules? Are they going to try and copy it? Are they going to try and adjust their profit loss rule? There's a lot to digest because we have a promotion relegation system, whereas in North America, where they have the luxury tax system already in place with Major League Baseball, they don't. Their league structure is different. There is no relegation. There is no promotion. The minor league affiliate, the G League, I think it's the G League or something. You've got players on two-way contracts. In the NBA, for example, in Major League Baseball, you've got the AAA minors and you've got AA minors, and you have the collegiate system where you can keep players. So there'll be players on two-way contracts. How does that impact? There's, what your match day roster is worth compared to what you're paying your entire roster with full-time contracts. Yeah, it's that spiders. I've got to get the Hoover out. It's annoying the fuck out of me. It's just annoying down there. But little spider, little spider. And I've got a load of dust, fluff. I've seriously got to tidy up. But no, the luxury tax is quite an interesting topic. I could drone on about it for quite some time. It was brought up during the with Major League Baseball at least, and I'm not an expert on finance and money and contracts, and I'm not very good at. I'm not great at math. I don't like maths, which is why this comes in handy when working out averages and doing basic sums. I'm not very good at maths. I never enjoy maths. Numbers just get a bit much for me. Never enjoyed it, but I'm not saying maths isn't important. But when it comes to Major League Baseball and their recent lockout they had a year or so ago, a lot of people were overlooking the fact that Major League Baseball has this luxury tax system, but doesn't have a salary cap system, and it's the only major league in North America which doesn't have a form of salary cap. It relies solely on a luxury tax, so it's basically um, it's interesting. So as I say, the teams with smaller budgets or smaller markets, they tend to be only competitive for a handful of seasons, and then they have to, trade their best players, or they can't offer their best players the contracts or the extensions the player wants. And it's and fair play to the players and their agents arguing for their pay. That's not their fault that modern sports got to this point with contracts, but they have to tear the team down. Therefore, have to rebuild, and they're not as successful. Um, but if a small market team or a lesser team with less budget suddenly wins a World Series or two, suddenly they have that extra income from reaching the postseason, those extra games, extra ticket revenue, extra merchandise sales, and so they can prolong for a season two extra their team. So they can keep that core together for a little bit longer, but eventually, again, compared to like the Yankees and the Red Sox, again, they can't financially compete. And it's a debate that baseball's been having for a long time. And that was being raised during their extended CBA lockout negotiations when the league owners decided to lock the players out, and the CBA negotiations. The CBA was allowed to lapse. That spider is annoying me. The spider's doing nothing. It's just there. I'm going to have to catch him in a cup and release him into the wild. But no, jokes aside, it was very striking that like a whole range of issues that in European sport we don't have. We don't have this free agency kind of, where's he going to sign? Is he going to sign? Well, we do, because you can get free transfers, but we don't have the same. Like, we don't have trade deadlock. We have transfer. We have two transfer windows in a season, which I find weird, rather than just a deadline for the end of the season. But we have a different transfer policy, trade policy, if you will, and we don't put the same emphasis on free agency. So free transfers happen like that. For players like available and is a free agent, they can just sign, and there's not the same. Normally, it's an average squad player who is off contract and is allowed to leave for nothing. Generally, very rarely will you have a superstar player without a salary cap. And so there's a lot more emphasis on trades because they have a longer trade window, and a lot more emphasis on trade deadline day. A lot of, and like similar to our transfer deadline day, but in every sport, and then free agency, there's a lot of mayhem because there's a window for free agents to sign and get the best deals. But all things aside, the way their contracts are structured are different. The way trades work are different because you have draft picks. We don't have that. We just have a financial deal between two clubs. Occasionally, you might see a player swap take place part of the transfer deal, but that'll be one player going one way, player for player, similar contracts, and no actual transfer fee takes place. They're classed as free agents. They'll have to leave on a free. But the way our player contracts work and player movement works between clubs is buyout clauses and stuff, completely different. And they're looking at changing the rules around that as well. But it's an interesting one. Yeah, they're considering, but yeah, the salary, the luxury tax. I don't know if it will be a workable system because of the promotion relegation system and because of transfer windows. I just don't think it's a workable system. It's already a flawed, broken system, as I say, with Major League Baseball. But like, and I don't know what else I can add to it. I'm not, as I say, I'm not a financial expert. I'm not. Maths is not my strong suit, and being a sports YouTuber, you would think that would help, but no. Maths is not where, and contracts are not necessarily my strong suit. And what I pride myself on is trying to keep things a bit more simple on this channel, because a lot of fans get really confused when they throw the big numbers around and contract arrangements and transfer this and trade that. It does get quite confusing. You've got to be a really, some people have got really, they claim they're experts, but they just repeat what they hear. And I don't think the so-called experts in regards to the TV media personalities really know what they're talking about. Sports contracts are designed to be confusing deliberately. They really are. They're very convoluted. There's a lack of transparency, and they are really complicated. So there is that. Now, it's Grand National Week, and we haven't covered that yet. Go away. I'm not interested in you. No, I'm not. I'm not going to shave. Thank you. So, and I've been told to have a shave. Go away. I get some really weird comments. I was just going to check the sports headline. I just get some really weird comments, like people going, "I look like a crackhead Wolverine." That's a good one. What am I doing? What am I pressing? Comments. I just find it funny. This guy's saying I need to shave, yet he has a Arabic name as his username. The irony of that. I'm half tempted to put no. There was an ugly incident. I find it interesting, some of the comments I get that are like aimed at me, like trying to be like how I look or how I discuss things. I'm like, you try to make it personal, and I'm not going to. I just don't respond anymore. Sometimes I have to come back with something funny or tongue in cheek, but I just try not to. Right, sports news. Before I get distracted, right, what do we want? BBC News. And let's have a look. Right, so OJ Simpson dies of cancer. I find it. Go away, site can't be reached. So OJ Simpson, they're still calling it the trial of the century. And the photo they're using is if the glove fits. There you go. If the glove fits. Right, let's get to the sport. Let's get to the sport. Where's the sport? Wow. A Vietnamese billionaire sentenced to death in Vietnam for $44 billion fraud. Right, the Masters. DeChambeau amongst the early leaders. So the Masters has started. Fernando Alonso has extended his deal with Aston Martin in F1 until the end of 2026. That's breaking news. So Aston Martin and Fernando Alonso have signed a contract extension. Now we were talking about luxury tax. This is just broken. The profit and sustainability rules are to remain the same next season. So the Premier League's current profit and sustainability rules are to remain in place for at least another 12 months. even though the clubs have agreed to change how they work earlier today. So at present, you can't lose more than 105 million over a 3-year period. Whereas UEFA has a model where it permits squad spending of a ratio of revenue and player sales. So they're delaying that by a year. But the system that currently is in place is going to remain for another 12 months. They talk about Everton and Forest being deduct points and the criticism by some for being overly prohibitive and for protecting clubs with greater revenues, which they do. And under UEFA rules, clubs can spend no more than 70% on their revenue and squad costs. And they've got a choice in June to go to a similar model, although we're likely to have an 85% limit. Go with UEFA, just streamline it across the board, please, because that paves the way for an actual salary gap. So they've decided to keep the current rules for at least another 12 months, and that goes into the luxury tax argument. Oh God, Lamine Yamal pundit Germain Burgos sacked after a remark causes Barcelona and PSG boycott. A Spanish TV station has sacked a pundit after he made a controversial remark about a Barcelona player, Lamine Yamal, before their Champions League game against PSG. Germain Burgos, working for Movistar, was speaking over footage of Yamal doing kick-ups when he made the remark. He is reported to have said if it doesn't go well for him, he could end up at a traffic light. Barcelona and PSG refused to give interviews to Movistar after the game. Movistar Plus condemns any kind of discrimination, because I think there was racial undertones to this, and will not allow this type of comment from any of the employees or collaborators linked to the platform. The remark, which has been interpreted as a reference to people who perform at traffic lights and ask drivers for money, came before Barcelona played PSG on Wednesday. He's apologised. He earned 35 caps for Argentina during his playing career. He's 54, and he spent 6 years in Spain with Mallorca and Atletico Madrid. Yamal, who's a young player of the Barca squad, was born in Spain to Moroccan and Equatorial Guinean parents. He's already got 6 caps for Spain. He's the youngest player to appear in the Champions League quarter-final. So he's younger than Messi. Wow. So Movistar have sacked a pundit. Sheffield United. Let's discuss this points deduction because it's been mentioned before. So if they stay up in the Premier League, they will not be deducted points. Sheffield United only when they next play in the Championship. So I think the same will be the same for Leicester when they get promoted back to the Premier League. There will be a points deduction. But they're not going to appeal. Sheffield United are not going to appeal against points deduction. Wow. So Sheffield United are not going to appeal their points deduction. That's interesting. So obviously this is a carry on from their transfer embargo they had before. Ujar returns. CJ Ujar makes first British team since doping ban. Oh, so obviously the Olympics are coming up, and you've got the World Athletics relays and all that. CJ Ujar has been included in the GB squad for the first time since serving a doping ban. He was banned for 22 months after testing positive for 2 banned substances at Tokyo Olympics. But he was cleared of intentionally doping. That's why he didn't get a full year. We got stripped of our 4x100 medals because of his doping violation. So I'll be pissed if I was his teammate. The World Athletic Relays take place in the Bahamas on the 4th and 5th of May. It's an Olympic qualifying. Okay. Wow, that's interesting. Wow. So he served his ban. Oh, hello. Impair et pass survived steward's inquiry on day 1 of G Grand National meeting. Okay, the Grand National meeting started. Here we go. Nottingham Forest. Nuno Espirito Santo says the bottom of the Premier League is a mess. Nottingham Forest boss Nuno Espirito Santo has called the situation at the bottom of the Premier League a mess. Relegation threatened Forest are appealing now. They are now appealing against their 4-point deduction, but they're still waiting hearing. The The decision must come by the 24th of May, 5 days after the end of the Premier League season. Although it is expected to be complete before then. Forest are out of the relegation zone on goal difference, and Everton are a place above them. Also expect to appeal against their decision. So Luton could then appeal against those appeals. This gets weird. Nuno says it's a mess. So much is going on. We can't clean up what's going to happen. They are found to have breached the profit sustainability by at least 34.5 million above their threshold of 61. Everton 2 points. Right. So Luton are equal on points with Forest, but Forest have a better goal difference. However, if Forest lose by 5 goals, and Luton lose by 1 goal, then it goes on the head-to-head, and that gets interesting because Nottingham Forest have a better head-to-head. Wow! But if Luton lose by 1 goal and Forest lose by 6, Forest drop into this. Oh, this is bananas. Luton Town could actually stay up because of points deductions. Mad. That is mad. So he's not happy. Okay. Philippe Clement, Rangers managers, Rangers offered Thursday staging a Dundee game. Dundee versus Rangers called off again at Dens Park. Philippe Clement says Rangers offered to play their twice proposed game against Dundee on Thursday. They will play it on Mars if needed. Wednesday's rearranged fixture was rained off after a pitch inspection. Rangers have accused Dundee of negligence and unprofessionalism, and the Tayside club will face disciplinary action after a 5th. I don't know what you can do when it keeps bloody raining, but the Scottish football's a mess anyway. Semi-automated offside technology finally approved by Premier League clubs for next season. Way. 5 players sink a hole in one at the Masters at par 3. Fenerbahce have been fined after their Turkish Super Cup walkout. Major League Cricket. The biggest fail that's waiting to happen. Steve Smith joins the Washington Freedom in Major League Cricket. Steve Smith has signed for Major League Cricket side Washington Freedom. You couldn't ask for a more cheesy name, but this is America. Steve Smith has signed for Major League Cricket Washington Freedom. He's 34 now. He scored nearly 10,000 test runs, and he will play in the US for the first time. He joins head coach Ricky Ponting, who lost in the... Okay. This is competition begins on the 4th of July. Follows the T20 World Cup, which is being hosted in the US as a co-host. Smith joins fellow Australian internationals Adam Zampa, who's playing at the Los Angeles Knight Riders. God, these American names. Spencer Johnson, also at the Knight Riders, and Tim David at the MI New York. Wow, that just sounds cheese as. A Rees-Zammit article, like we haven't had enough of them over the last 2 weeks. Lewis Rees-Zammit, former Wales rugby star, keen to prove worth in cutthroat NFL. I mean, how many more articles are we going to have on just Lewis Rees-Zammit? Who's bankrolling Major League Cricket? I'm going to have to, let me just quickly have a look at that. I was going to go save me reading about Lewis Rees-Zammit again. Major League Cricket, yeah. Who's bankrolling it? I don't know. It's obviously a franchise. It's obviously same setup with every major league in the US. I think the closest we'll get to Major League Cricket in an operational sense would be Major League Rugby, because that's like the newest, league out there. Okay, Major League Cricket is a professional T20 cricket league in the United States. It's operated by American Cricket Enterprises and sanctioned by USA Cricket. So the governing body, their version of the ECB is obviously sanctioning the event. It began last year on July 13th. It had 6 teams. The first season took place over just 3 weeks. You got minor league cricket. Oh my God. You got minor league cricket. That's just cheese. Which was all 27 teams in minor league. Wow. Okay. Right. It's a round robin and playoffs. American Cricket Enterprises. Okay. There have been various attempts to hold a T20 league in the US, such as the short-lived Pro Cricket for 1 year in 2004, the American Premier League, which was proposed by the United States of America Cricket Association, the USACA, and New Zealand Cricket. However, that's been failed to launch. In November 2018, USA Cricket announced it was seeking partners to establish a T20 league by 2021 with the goals to engage existing fans and grow new ones. That's always a nice little press release. And spur sustainable development in cricketing infrastructure across the United States. By 2019, the May, USA Cricket accepted a bid by American Cricket Enterprises for a $1 billion investment covering the league and other investments benefiting the US national teams. Wow. Its partners include Saitan Gawani and Vinay Jain of the Times Group and Willow TV founders Samir Mehta and Vijay Srinivasyan. So, Indian expats. As part of the agreement, ACE also handles commercial activities for the T20 and ODI matches hosted by the United States. In 2019, of January, USA Cricket was approved as the new governing board for cricket in USA, replacing USA CA, which had been expelled from the International Cricket Council due to governance issues. So there's already dodginess behind this. The new body set a goal for cricket to reach a wider mainstream popularity in the country where it's typically considered a niche sport. The annual general meeting on 21st of Feb 2020, it was stated that USA Cricket planned to launch Major League Cricket in 2021 and a 22-team development league known as Minor League that summer as a prelude. Minor League Cricket was officially announced the following week, with plans to host a 9-week, 170-game season beginning July 4th. However, obviously, COVID happened. In the October, USA Cricket reaffirmed plans to launch it in 2022 as part of a foundational plan. It was confirmed in December of that year that Shah Rukh Khan, who is a Bollywood actor, would invest in ACE. By the February of 2021, Major League Cricket announced plans for for minor league and major league youth leagues, which would, alongside an MLC junior championship and player development program, serve as a development system for younger players to progress towards the major league and the national team. They delayed the launch to 2023 due to COVID-19 and additional time to develop facilities. So they delayed it a couple of times. Launch. May 2022, Major League Cricket announced it acquired funds of $120 million as part of its Series A and A1 fundraising rounds. Investors committing to Major League Cricket featured Microsoft CEO Satya Nadella, Ross Perot Jr., Anand Raja Maraman, Shantanu Narayanan, and more. So there's a lot of Indian involvement and Indian expat involvement in the US. And also Microsoft. MLC plans to use these funds to mainly build stadiums and first-class facilities in the hopes of accelerating the development of the sport across the US. In June 2022, Major League Cricket announced the inaugural season with the minor league youth. The inaugural season was announced. November 2020 was announced the first season of Major League Cricket would be staged in July last year at Grand Prairie. The tournament will play for a single round robin format of 15 matches played among 6 franchises before a 4-match playoff phase. It also hopes to play games in LA and North Carolina. 2023, last year, it was announced that the player draft for the league would be held on March 19th. Blah, 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 blah. The 2024 season. In December, it was announced that the second season would begin on July 4th and just after the ICC T20 World Cup. It was also reported that matches would be played in Grand Prairie Stadium along with other venues. In February of this year, the lists of retained domestic and overseas players were released ahead of the domestic player draft. And Cognizant was named as the title sponsor of the league from this year onwards. Broadcasters. In the US, they're broadcast by Willow and CBS Sports Network with Sling TV, other broadcasters in the US. International, you've got TNT here, TNT Sports, formerly BT Sport here in the UK, Sports 18 in India, Fox Cricket in Australia, and Sky Sport in New Zealand. So they're not actually going massively wild, but there is investment. So American Cricket Enterprises, so they are getting a bit of investment there, but that's an interesting one. I did find that interesting. Let's get rid of the history. Let's have a look at the list of broadcasters. They really don't have a lot of broadcasters, do they? They really don't. Who owns the teams? This is because there's obviously a franchise base. So right. So we've got a lot of Indian investment, in the teams. I'm not very good at pronouncing Indian names. But that's a very interesting question. Who's bankrolling Major League Cricket? That's an interesting one. And I would say that the closest comparable would be Major League Rugby as a new, younger professional league in the in the US. Major League Rugby. Let's have a look at Major League Rugby. Let's see what's happening there, because I haven't followed that for a little while. Major League Rugby. Here we go. Let's see who's playing in Major League Rugby, and who's actually supporting Major League Rugby. Okay, let's have a look. At the moment, there's just the 12 teams. Canada no longer has a team. Wow. The Rugby Network. Let's have a look at the International Rugby Network. So the Rugby Network is the international broadcaster of note. Okay. Let's have a look. Create a free account. Action pack professional rugby. Subscribe today. Yeah, but okay, cool. Accept. Yeah, but do you have to pay? How do I subscribe? Create account. You do have to pay. Okay. That's annoying. That's annoying that it's not a free one. Wow, they're already on round 6. That's mad. That is mad. Okay, right. Let's see what teams are in Major League Rugby these days. It has a high of 13 teams for 2022. Currently, there's 12. It's also got its first. It's also got a draft now as well, so that's interesting. Let's have a look at teams. Wow, so they've got New England, DC, Carolina, Chicago, Miami, New Orleans, Houston, Dallas, San Diego, Los Angeles, Utah, and Seattle. So you've got a team in North Carolina. Oh, wow, some of these stadiums are actually quite big. So Major League Rugby. So the American Legion Memorial Stadium, where Anthem RC plays, 10,500, and this is their first season. Chicago play at SeatGeek Stadium, 20,000 capacity. That's quite big. The Dallas Jackals play at Choctaw Stadium, 48,000. That's mad. Houston Sabercats, 4,000. Okay, Miami Sharks, Auto Nation Sportsville, 5,000. New England Free Jacks, the current champions, Veterans Memorial Stadium, 5,000. The New Orleans Gold or NOLA Gold Mine on Airline, 10,000 seat stadium. Old Glory, Maryland Soccerplex, 5,000. The Rugby FC Los Angeles, I get that. DT Health Sports Block, 27,000. Okay, San Diego, wow, the Snapdragon Stadium, San Diego, 35,000. That's big. Seattle Seawolves, Starfire Stadium, 4.5. Utah Warriors, 5,000. Okay. But some of these stadiums are big. So Choctaw Stadium, formerly Globe Life Park, is an American microcosm in Arlington, Texas. Opened as a baseball stadium. And it was home of the Texas Rangers until 2019. It is now home of. What's it home of? Yeah, the Dallas Jackals. Wow. It was retrofitted. Okay, it was retrofitted. Okay, that's a big stadium for Dallas to play in. The American Legion of Memorial Stadium is a 10,500 seat stadium in Charlotte, North Carolina. It's an Independence Park is also close by. Okay. Wow, until 1996, when Bank of America Stadium was opened, it was the largest outdoor stadium in Charlotte, and it's still the largest municipally owned stadium in the city. Wow, did not know that. That's publicly owned. It's actually owned by the local county. Wow. Oh, they have reduced the capacity, though. They have reduced the capacity. Okay. It was renovated. It's been closed. It's reopened. Okay, so they've renovated it. Okay, that's interesting. I'm just looking at some of the stadiums. Maybe I'm sorry, but the SeatGeek Stadium. I hate corporate sponsorship of stadiums. Really, SeatGeek. Wow, I'm going to the SeatGeek rather than I'm oh wow. Yeah, it's in Bridgeview. It's 12 miles southwest. It's downtown Chicago. Well, it's not actually a bad stadium. Actually, it was called Toyota Park. Okay, it's not a bad stadium. Okay. Okay, so it does see a fair few. Okay, okay. What are we Chicago Hounds. Okay, rugby union. SeatGeek Stadium hosted its first international match in 2007 with the US losing to Munster. Okay, June 2008, the stadium hosted 3 matches of the Churchill Cup, including US Canada, England Saxons versus Scotland A, and Ireland Wolfhounds versus Argentina Jaguares. A mid-year rugby test series between the United States and Wales as a warm-up match to qualify the rugby. Okay. Cool. Major soccer events. Oh, the US have played games there in Canada. Oh, that's cool. And Mexico. Oh, they play some qualification matches. That's pretty cool. That's actually pretty cool. Okay, so that's that stadium. The Sabercat Stadium, 4,000 capacity. I mean, this is it's a rugby union stadium in Houston, Texas, part of the Houston Sports Park, and it's home of the Houston Sabercats. Okay, so that opened in 2019, and they changed the name in 2022. Okay, it's a tiny stadium though, but the Houston Dynamo have their reserve team play there as well. The Houston Havoc. Wow, that's a cool name. Is the first stadium in the league built specifically for? Oh, that's pretty cool. So that's the first league sport specific. Okay, that's pretty cool. Auto Nation Sports Field in Miami. It's in Fort Lauderdale, built in the former Lockhart Stadium. Okay. Wow. Fort Lauderdale capacity. Okay. American football. And Veterans Memorial Stadium in New England is a multi-purpose outdoor stadium in Quincy, Massachusetts. Some of these team names and sports names. It's a high school stadium, so a professional sports team is using a high school stadium. I mean that's just ridiculous. Wow, it opened in 1938. So that's an old school stadium. I like that. Old school. I like old school. Gold Mine on Airline. Wow. Gold Mine on Airline, formerly Shrine on Airline, is a 10,000 seat stadium in Louisiana, in Metairie. It's the home of the NOLA Gold. It was known as Zephyr Field when it was built in 1997. Wow, for the New Orleans Baby Cakes, formerly known as the New Orleans Zephyrs. Baby Cakes, but that's just okay. It's actually owned by the state of Louisiana. Wow. Okay. Cool. But it's a baseball stadium. The Maryland Soccerplex. Some of the Americans aren't very inventive with their stadium names. Maryland Soccerplex is in Germantown, Maryland, although its mailing address is in Boyd's, Maryland. So if you know 2000, okay, so it's reasonable age. It has multiple fields. That's pretty cool. Okay, so Old Glory have just moved there. Okay, the New England. Old Glory have just moved there. Okay, Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California, for Los Angeles. Multi-sport complex in California. Oh, it's California State University, Dominguez Hills, Carson, California. 27,000 seat Dignity Health Sports Park soccer stadium, tennis stadium, and track and field facility. Ooh, and a velodrome. That's a multi-sport. That's pretty cool. What do we have? Opened in 2003, 150 million. Okay. I'm sorry, but Snapdragon Stadium, San Diego, 35. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's a nice stadium. I'm not going to lie, that's a nice stadium. That is quite nice. And it opened in 20. Okay, I didn't open that long ago. That's kind of cool. And San Diego in the MLS play there, the FC, San Diego League. Okay, so they've got a couple of pro teams that use the stadium. Starfire Stadium in Seattle is a multi-purpose stadium in Tukwila, Washington. The Green River, just north of Seattle. Starfire Sports, a non-profit organisation. Oh, it's synthetic turf. Oh, but it's only it's been open since 2003. Okay. Zions Bank Stadium is in Herriman, Utah, and it's only got a 5,000 seat capacity. Wow. Ultimate Frisbee Association. That's kind of cool. Ultimate Frisbee Association. Ultimate Frisbee. Wow. That's pretty cool. Right. So that's all the stadiums. But yeah, some teams have disappeared. So we've lost Toronto Arrows have ceased to exist. Rugby United in New York has ceased to exist. Atlanta relocated to LA. Okay. That's interesting. And LA have had another team cease to exist. It looks like they're bringing in a team in Mexico in 2025. Wow. So yeah, certain teams have disappeared. It's a $4 million expansion fee in 2019, and they're bringing a team in Mexico in 2025. So the former teams are Colorado Raptors, LA Guillotines, that was never a good name, Austin Grigones, Toronto Arrows, Rugby New York. Oh, let's go up to the Toronto Arrows because they were pretty cool. I like the Toronto Arrows kit. Was a club. They were on hiatus apparently. History. Let's have a look. I liked their logo between 2018 when they. So they were called the Ontario Arrows. Then the final season. Okay. Oh right. So the president passed, and so they were not going to compete. Okay. Okay. So what happened to Rugby New York? What happened to them? They're completely disbanded. They tried to sell the team and they couldn't find a buyer. Okay, that makes sense. Colorado Raptors, they withdrew after because of COVID. LA Guillotines, yeah, they didn't last very long. They were disqualified in 2022. They were both removed. This is interesting. So the owner owned two teams and they were both kicked out the league. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Oh, so the owner, Gilchrist, ran two teams and he couldn't financially sustain them and they both got kicked out. That's interesting. Wow. Okay. Wow. Okay. Okay. So there's been some issues, but Major League Rugby's had the same problems as Major League Soccer in its early years in being sustainable. Yeah, so it's interesting that Major League Rugby's contracted and expanded and contracted multiple times already, and it's only been going since 2018. That's mad. It's mad, lad. No, I thought I'd just have a little look at certain things. I know I've gone a little bit off sidetrack and people have tuned in and tuned out, but it's interesting because I used to follow Major League Rugby in its first couple of seasons intensely, and it's interesting to look at. Some of the stadiums they're playing in are quite big and some are quite small. There's a difference in size of stadium, and some of them, European football clubs would be quite happy with, if I'm honest. So it's interesting looking at the facilities that teams are using and the size of stadiums. Some are quite big and some are quite small. So that's quite interesting. But it's also interesting that one owner owns two teams. That's really that would for me be a conflict of interest, owning two teams at the same time. But that's neither here nor there. And yeah, that's really interesting. Looking at that, really interesting. Let's have a look at the NRL fixtures tomorrow, because there's two NRL games tomorrow. Oh yeah, the Roosters beat the Knights 22 points to 20. NRL fixtures. Here we go. So tomorrow we've got the Storm versus the Bulldogs and the Broncos Dolphins. They're two good games. I'm really looking forward to that. Two really good games. Currently, the table looks like this. The Dolphins are currently top. Cowboys are currently second. Panthers third. Storm fourth. Sharks fifth. And they're all on 8 points, although not all of them have played the same amount of games because there's been some bye rounds and stuff. The Raiders are sixth. The Warriors seventh. The Roosters are currently at eighth with that win today, although they have played the most games. Then it's the Sea Eagles. Then it's the Tigers. Then it's the Broncos. Then it's the Knights, who've also played the most games. Then the Bulldogs. Then the Eels, then the Dragons, then the Titans. And the Bunnies have actually got the worst defence. The Bunnies have got the worst attack and the worst defence. So they are in trouble. I know there's been a lot of rumours circulating about Mal Meninga coming in and Jason Demetrio being booted as coach. We'll see how that all plays out in the background. There's been a lot of speculation about who's going to be coaching the Rabbitohs going forward, and I've done videos discussing it, and I've discussed it quite in depth as a topic. So who's and so when we're talking about a lot of the chat and the live stream today has not actually been sport related. It's been related to OJ Simpson. And where were you that day? I was a kid. But no, so on the NRL front of things, if we can circle back to that, go away, bug. It's been South Sydney have been dominating the headlines. They're the club in the spotlight, regardless of the results, and they're the club in the spotlight at the moment. In the last couple of years, it's been the Dragons and the Tigers have been clubs under the spotlight because of things happening off the field and poor results. But at the moment, it's South Sydney. Every podcast is talking about it. Every mainstream media outlet is talking about it. Every individual YouTuber is talking about it. I mean, I'm even talking about it, and I cover multiple sports. I'm going, there's something going on here. This is more than just a poor start to the season. There are much deeper issues within the organisation, which are manifesting themselves with performances, with clear issues where, I mean, you don't undermine a coach like that at a good organisation. That's, even if there's bad results, you don't undermine the head coach by basically saying, well, we're basically shopping around for your replacement, regardless of what you do. That is not a good sign that this is an organisation that is a positive environment. That speaks a lot to the culture of the organisation off the field. This also speaks to a sign of we're panicking. They're panicking. And they've been quite a stable, consistent team for over a decade now, 15 years or so. They're rarely outside the top 8. If they narrowly miss, they narrowly miss, but they've not been at the bottom of the league for a very long time. So this is like an alien concept for South Sydney. They're not used to being in this position, and they don't know how to react to it. The board don't know how to react to it. The fan base are frustrated. They're quite a big fan base. They've got fans all over the world, but they are quite a big fan base. They've got that celebrity backing with Russell Crowe. They have that. They played that game in Vegas. That's brought them to the international attention and especially in North American attention. And they just don't know how to respond to this. So it's an interesting subplot. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Jason Demetrio keeps his job for another week, if they have a good result against the Sharks. If they lose against the Sharks, I think that's their season unravelled. It doesn't matter who you get in, Mal Meninga or someone else. I don't think actually appointing Mal Meninga is the right way to look at it, and the right appointment. I think that could make things worse. And that brings in a different media spotlight onto the organisation. But we'll see how it plays out. We'll see we'll see what happens. But it's definitely an organisation under the spotlight. Players are under pressure, um, and there's a lot of spotlight on how the organisation works off the field, behind the scenes, how they deal with their individual players. I mean, it seems to me that there's certain players that get favourable treatment. Well, it's known, and the way they handled Morris and Burgess's departure as assistant coaches last year and didn't take heed of what they were saying in the exit interviews. They've burnt some bridges with those guys that they could get back in as potential head coaches. I mean, Morris could come in straight away as a potential interim head coach, but I don't think he wants to go back into the organisation. He's quite happy and settled at West Tigers. I think Sam Burgess, Warrington would expect some kind of buyout clause in his contract, and they obviously want to win the Super League and the Challenge Cup. So I can't see him leaving Warrington anytime soon. So they've backed themselves into a corner with how they're dealing with things. There's no available coaches really. Everyone's tied up for the rest of this season, and then there's uncertainty surrounding Bennett and Bellamy for next year. But I can't see them wanting to relocate back to Sydney anytime soon. And it's a very complex situation. And the club have handled things quite badly. So that's quite an interesting one, considering where they were this time last year and how they were playing really well, top of the league, on a good run of form, and then suddenly it all falls apart very, very quickly. Very, very interesting. Very interesting how things have turned out. The Gold Coast Titans haven't won a game yet. No one's talking about them in like, oh, there's no spotlight on another struggling team. The spotlight is solely on the Bunnies right now. Other teams are like, okay, this is happening. It's dominating the rugby league news. So we'll see what happens going forward with Souths, and we'll see what happens to Jason Dimitri over the coming days. But I can't see him being coached for much longer. I mean, they have the bye next week. I think the club wants the bye to happen as soon as possible. They need the bye to happen. They need something else to happen in the rugby league world to divert headlines away from them. So that's interesting. Other NRL news that I think isn't getting the coverage because of what's happening at South Sydney and the chaos surrounding that is Josh Schuster and the Manly Sea Eagles saying you can leave now immediately. Considering his contract extension doesn't kick in till next year. He hasn't performed well in reserve grade, and he hasn't had a single game in first grade this season. They can't fit him into the side, and he's not producing at the level that they want him to. And so Josh Schuster looks like he's going to be signing somewhere else almost immediately. So we'll see where Josh Schuster ends up. But that's interesting as a subplot. But there's no attention being paid to that because of what's happening at the Bunnies right now. So that's the NRL covered. On the AFL side of things, there's no real further updates really on their illicit drugs policy. That seems to have gone a little bit quiet for now, but I can see more coming out about that a little bit later as time goes on. But there's the odd article popping up about the illicit drugs policy that the AFL has. There's going to be a meeting at some point in the next coming weeks where club CEOs and club boards meet with the league and the Players Association to come up with a new or a revamped illicit drugs policy. They might completely scrap it and bring a new policy in altogether. But that's gone a bit quiet at the moment over the last week or so. But that's still bubbling in the background. The AFL, I think, are pretty happy that the Australian sports media is focusing on the South Sydney Rabbitohs and their meltdown. They're quite happy that the media heat's off them for the moment in that regard. So that's interesting. Obviously, we were talking about, I was going to mention the Oakland A's. This is their last season in Oakland in Major League Baseball. They will be playing in Sacramento for at least the next 3 years. We don't know if they're going to end up in Vegas, if that's definitely confirmed as happening, or if they're going to end up somewhere else, such as Salt Lake City. So we're circling back to Salt Lake City because the state government in Utah has said we're guaranteeing $900 million in funding for a Major League Baseball stadium. Fuck off, bug. God, these bugs are not. I've got bloody fucking moth. Bloody insect. So we don't know what's going to happen to the Oakland A's post 2027. We don't know what's been confirmed with Las Vegas, if there's any planning application, if they're going to start building their new ballpark in Vegas on the Tropicana site, and then you've got the potential of ending up in Salt Lake City. So there's that open in the air. And of course, the state legislature in Utah has also granted about the similar amount of money for an indoor arena for the NBA and the NHL. And of course, with what's going on with Arizona and with the Utah Jazz already having a facility, I think it's United Center, which is a bit tired and needs a refurb or a rebuild or a replacement. We could see, the Coyotes be playing in Utah as soon as this coming season. So that's what I started the live stream on. I want to also look at the club history series that I resumed, and I know I've done a lot of Swiss clubs, and it's been kind of interesting to do the Swiss club. Really, it has been quite interesting doing a lot of Swiss clubs. I think I'm going to shelve the Swiss clubs for now, and I'm going to look at some more clubs around Europe. I might do a video on Lazio because that got brought up last night in live stream, and I haven't done Lazio yet as an Italian club. They're very interesting and controversial, and I think I might look at some of the Austrian clubs. I think that'd be quite interesting to look at the Austrian clubs, because or maybe some of the Belgian clubs as well. There's some interesting ones and quite successful clubs in Austria and Belgium, and that I need to look at. That'd be quite interesting to do at some point over the next couple of days. And that'd be kind of fun to do. But the research has been fun. Some of the foundation stories are really interesting and quite fun to look at. It is a very interesting and very competitive league. Lots of clubs have won the league title in Switzerland. More than people realise, it's a surprisingly competitive league, even though certain clubs seem to have dominated the majority of league titles. The amount of clubs that have actually won league titles in Switzerland is really, really interesting. And also Swiss Cups as well. They're nicely distributed around as well. So there's some really interesting club histories to do, and they're kind of fun. But we'll look at Austria, we'll look at Belgium. We'll do Lazio tomorrow. That's going to be fun, looking at Lazio, their foundation, their refusal to merge with the other clubs in Rome to form AS Roma, and then their post AS foundation of AS Roma, that rivalry, and then their successes, failures, and some of the other stuff surrounding it. We'll look at their record goal scorer, record appearance holder, that kind of stuff. Lazio is going to be fun, but they are a very controversial club globally and in Italy, so that's going to be a fun one. They're not without controversy, obviously. Then on some of the Belgian clubs like Standard Liège, Anderlecht, Brussels FC, for example, they'll be fun to look at them. There's some fun clubs in Belgium to look at, and then we've obviously got some of the Austrian clubs like Rapid Vienna, Sturm Graz, for example. There's some big clubs in Austria to look at who are quite well known outside of Austria. Even Red Bull Salzburg, that's a very controversial RB Salzburg, like RB Leipzig, kind of controversial because of the ownership and how Red Bull and their ownership model came about. So that's kind of interesting. We can look at that. And yeah, it's interesting. But I'm very surprised though with the Premier League agreeing to keep the current profits and sustainability rules for another year, even though UEFA have a different system and what they're voting on is different rather than streamlined. So very, very interesting to see that the Premier League is going to keep their spending rules for another 12 months. And Sheffield United getting a points deduction to start next season. Very interesting as well. So there's a lot going on there. But no, it's been a fun little live stream. I know we covered a lot about OJ Simpson. A lot about OJ Simpson. That was interesting. I'm going to have to do a video on OJ Simpson at some point, either this evening or tomorrow. Most likely tomorrow I'll do a video on OJ Simpson. That's going to be fun to do. very controversial character, very, very controversial in his time. But there we go. Anyway, I'm going to leave that there. Thank you very much for all your questions. We went a bit off the sports side of things into the O.J. Simpson and other moments in social history and where were you moments, and had a little bit of discussion about certain things. But no, that's generally where our live streams end up. We're not always sports based, but there we go. Thanks for everything. Thanks for all your questions, and we'll see if and when the Premier League clubs, when they do decide to bring in their version of UEFA's spending rules, but they are going to keep profit and sustainability rules for at least another 12 months. There is a meeting to be held at the end of the Premier League season, and we'll see what goes on from there. And the Premier League relegation battles got really tasty with those points deductions for Nottingham Forest and Everton, with Luton being one win away from leapfrogging both Everton and Forest, and then that gets really complicated. We know they're appealing, and it's getting quite tasty at the bottom of the table when there's lots of legal stuff going on. But for me, for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more content for you guys very, very soon.